Oh, thank you. Thank you for being fast with it.
So Leanna, as soon as you're in, you're ready for your public statement.
All right, do I just start talking and then my time will start? Is that how it works?
Very good.
Okay, cool. Members of the school board, thank you so much for opening up the floor for community discussion. My name is Eliana Sauer, and I'm a junior at Memorial High School. I got a chance to read the presentation about debating removing standalone honors classes in favor of only earned honors classes before this meeting, and I have a few things that I'd like to share about this topic. This is because at my time at Memorial, I have had the unique experience of both getting earned honors credit in my freshman year and taking a multitude of honors and AP classes in the following years. While I recognize that there is a need for MMSD to take urgent and decisive action in making our schools anti-racist, and I applaud you, the school board, for trying to find these solutions, I don't think that getting rid of standalone honors classes is exactly the solution that we need. With my time tonight, I'd like to share my personal experience, provide what I find to be the issues with this plan, and offer my suggestions for a better attempt at achieving these results. So firstly, I'd like to touch on my experiences in both earned honors and standalone honors classes. So in my freshman year, I was in earned honors Algebra 1, which meant that I was in a normal Algebra 1 class with lots of kids who were not trying to earn honors. In order to earn honors, you had to complete extra questions on tests and do extra work that your teacher then had to grade and give you the appropriate points. It was a lot of work on you as a student to make sure that you were doing these and doing them correctly to get that credit. It was by no means an easy thing that everyone did. But then I took normal honors classes and I found that earned honors was so much different. Not only was the quality of the questions that you had to answer different, but the classroom environment was entirely different. Not just because of the students or the teacher in the class, but just the environment and atmosphere around the class itself. And I know that I'm a student who can function in both, but a whole lot of students cannot function that way. And this brings me to why I think that this is not the optimal solution for getting more kids interested in honors classes. So, as I said before, for better or for worse, lots of kids can't function in both of those environments. And a lot of the kids that take honors and AP classes take them because that is how they learn best, in an environment where things move fast and where the teacher is teaching one thing to everyone. In honors, that's not in non-honors, that's not necessarily the case, because your teacher is catering to everyone. And if you're trying to get more detailed information, you might have to stay after class or find a way to ask that on your own time. It's not just brought up to you like it is in honors classes. Another reason why this isn't necessarily a great plan to completely get rid of standalone honors classes is that it's more work for our teachers. Forcing teachers to be the ones in charge of recognizing which students should be getting honors is just putting more work on them and giving them an unnecessary burden that they don't need to have. In a situation where earned honors is an option for some and not in every single class, and there's still the honors option, then the teacher doesn't necessarily have to worry about this problem all the time. And my last concern is with the college application process. I'm starting to look at applying for colleges this year as a junior, and one of the things that keeps getting emphasized is the rigor of your schedule. If we were to change over to only earned honors, colleges will be able to see that based on what they see on our secondary school transcripts, and they would have no way to prove that this is actually a rigorous honors class, because earned honors is very different from an honors class itself. This would then put a lot of our students at a disadvantage and show that they supposedly aren't taking as rigorous of a curriculum, which would then make the application process even harder, especially for our students who don't have a ton of support behind them in that process. So while I think it's imperative that we get more diverse students in honors classes, I don't necessarily think that completely getting rid of standalone honors is the way to do this. I think we need to work on introducing more earned honors classes while still offering the standalone option. And I think that this is worth noting as an opportunity because also a large part of this enrollment gap that we're seeing and that the data shows between students in honors classes and students getting earned honors comes a lot from how these classes are advertised. I went to Jefferson Middle School, and when we were looking at enrolling in high school classes, the counselors came in and talked to us about, here are your options, here's honors, here's non-honors. But the thing that they made sure to emphasize to us is that you should only be taking one honors class. Your freshman year, you should only take one. I tried to sign up for 2 or 3, and I was pretty much told that they wouldn't sign my card unless I could prove that this was an option for me. This is really problematic that students are discouraged from taking more honors classes and challenging themselves, especially in freshman year, which is such a transition time and shows if you're capable of continuing. I think that if we can change this messaging and make it aware to everyone that you are encouraged to try and take those honors classes, we might see a huge change in enrollment right away. I also think that we should be introducing more earned honors classes. For me, earned honors was a really great way to show that, yes, I could succeed in an honors math class. And I think that there are students who will flourish with this policy, but if we take away all the standalone honors classes, there are a lot of students who will also suffer too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for providing that testimony. Next order of business, I'd like to approve, or I move to approve the minutes from the instruction work group meeting dated October 5th, 2020. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second from Ali. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Ananda. All right, let's move into a reopening schools update.
Okay. Great, I'm glad we have this opportunity to bring this topic back for you, board, and to our community, as we have started off with our earliest learners, and everything is going really well. And I have to say again, compliments to Lisa Kivstad and her entire Chiefs group, as they have led our reopening. Now you're going to hear from the rest of the team. I'm going to have Lisa Kivstad start off, and then we'll get to the Chiefs as they're talking about the important work that they're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. We have 3 items for our instruction work group tonight. The first of the items is our chiefs will talk a little bit about reopening for all of us, and this maintains our commitment to keeping the Board of Education updated and engage all of us in two-way communication around what's happening with reopening. After the Chiefs reopening update, TJ McCrae will talk briefly about our initial plans for a virtual program in this upcoming fall. And then we will move right along into our conversation about earned honors. And I want to thank here right away, our 4 comprehensive high school principals are here to join us in that conversation. So we look forward to that with you. So at this point, I will turn it over to the Chiefs to talk about reopening.
Good evening, everyone. Barb, can you go to the next slide? So we're going to just start off with some data this evening with you so that you can see where we are with our returning preference app information. For elementary school, we're really proud that we had 99% completion from parents selecting if their students were going to be returning in person or remaining virtual. As you can see here, we have 72% of our students in elementary will be returning to in-person instruction. This is the final opportunity that families had to select in-person or virtual. And so these are our final numbers for elementary. Transportation is at 43%, so approximately 3,656 students. I also just want to highlight our school-based staff, Janet Dyer with MSCR, Nichelle and the FICE team, Bree with Strategic Partnerships, Demetra and the team for the hotline for the returning preference app, that we had 23 schools that had a completion rate of 99% or higher. So really specifically, we had 15 schools that were at 100% completion, and 8 of those schools were, 8 additional schools at 99% completion. Secondary as well had a 98% completion rate, with 63% of their students returning in person. The number that you see there for transportation with 18% is going to be a changing number as secondary continues to work with Madison Metro to solidify transportation for students. We also wanted to do a shout out to La Follette, Whitehorse, Wright, and Black Hawk for leading secondary with 100% completion rates. Next slide. This is our reopening timeline, just to make everyone familiar with this again. So tomorrow, our third grade staff will be returning to prepare for our third grade students coming back on April 13th. Also, just a reminder that the 4K through second grade students that had a change in their return, so if they were previously virtual and their parents selected in person, those students will also come back starting on the 13th. And on April 20th, you'll see the grade levels that will be returning to in-person instruction during that time. And secondary chiefs will go over the days and what those will look like for students. Next slide. So the last time we met, we were able to share with you some of the kindergarten joy, and just to be in the schools when 4K returned was just as phenomenal as when kindergarten and the other grade levels returned as well. But we just wanted to share with you not only the smiles, but if you look on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, this teacher and a lot of the teachers in the district are doing some intentional work around with roomies and zoomies. And you've heard a lot about that with the students who are in person, the roomies, and the students who remain virtual are the zoomies. And so what this teacher intentionally did is she took her zoomies and they are actually participating in the centers with the students that are there in person. And so that's just some of the work that teachers are doing to make sure that the students who remain virtual are still feeling a part of the classroom community and participating in the small groups. And so we just wanted to be sure that you were able to see an example of that as well. Just a little shameless plug as well for elementary, that we did include our Instagram and Twitter. While we're out, we do like to capture a lot of the things that are happening in the schools. And so just to be sure to follow us on that so you can keep up with what's going on with our elementary buildings. Next slide. And we've done a lot of talking around what's happening with returning in person, but we would be remiss if we did not talk about what we're also doing, or what Rosa is also doing with some of the intentional work with virtual learning and virtual groups with our students. And so this is Black Girl Magic. I know that Nichelle talked briefly about this during the Black Excellence presentation before spring break, but we also wanted you just to be aware of some of the really great work that she's doing with the virtual sister circles. And she was able to secure Miss Universe to come in and speak to the girls. Miss Universe is from South Africa. She's the first South African to win Miss Universe. To be on that call with the girls and just to experience their excitement. The chat was on fire with questions that they had for her. It was a true example of why representation matters. Things in the chat such as, it's the melanin for me, you know, her natural hair, but she was able to, again, answer a lot of those questions that the girls had. And they just had really great conversation. And just to be able to see her and talk directly to her was just something special for them to experience. In addition to that, during the virtual sister circles, she was able to have some of the female muralists from the State Street Artwork come in and do some small group work with the students and have some small group breakout discussions with those girls as well. So I just wanted to highlight some of the great work again that Rosa is doing with Black Girl Magic, and some of the work that's happening with virtual instruction as well, or virtual opportunities that we have for our students. Next slide. And I am going to turn it over to secondary, but before I do that, turn it over to Marvin and Mike. I also just want to say that we are really proud of the work that elementary staff have done in making sure that we have had a safe return for staff and students to school. It has been, again, phenomenal so far. with the mitigation strategies that have been put in place. And we've just seen tremendous results from what we're hearing from parents, again, and what we're hearing from teachers, just being able to return and to be with students again. Marvin.
Thank you so much, Coletra. And before I begin, I'd just like to say this. Coletra, I'd like to congratulate you and the entire team that you work with in facilitating the return of elementary. You made it look easy, and I just can't thank you enough for the work you have done being the trailblazer for this return for us as well. At this time, though, I will share with you some segments from the secondary side of the house. You can never compete with the little ones, but as you see on your screen here, I just wanted to share with you some of the excitement that is being generated on the secondary side. You know, oftentimes we think about secondary and we say we're a little stoic, but as you can see, the excitement that's being generated around the district about this return has been phenomenal at this point. And we'll talk to you more about the excitement on campuses once our students begin to return. Next slide, please. And so tonight, we're going to talk to you just a little bit about the secondary schools hybrid design. I must admit that we tried very hard not to reinvent the wheel. We had the luxury of really watching and working alongside the elementary side of the house and seeing a lot of the strategies and some of the protocols that they put in place. And a lot of them are the same. When we talk about safety protocols and mitigating strategies, all of those are consistent. But we noticed that when we began to start looking at our schedule, that's where we started to see some differences between elementary and the secondary side of the house. And so tonight, we're going to share with you the hybrid design that we landed on and hopefully give you a better understanding of what it's going to look like from the perspective of the students, the teachers, and families. Before we move into the design, I would like to give a special shout out and thank you to Amy Knight from Communications. They've done a marvelous job working with us and providing answers to a lot of frequently asked questions from families. They customize websites for every middle school and every high school with a lot of the answers to those frequently asked questions. And they also lifted a lot of the questions and answers to those questions on the district's website. And so if you still have questions out there, we ask that you visit either the school website or the district level website. There are a plethora of responses to frequently asked questions there. Next slide, please. So, secondary instructional model, where are we? Again, as I stated earlier, we were really following the lead with elementary. And unlike elementary, having just naturally the cohort model, that would not work for us. And so after many sessions with secondary principals and visiting almost every neighboring district here to see what models exist out there, we collectively landed on the hybrid model. It's a hybrid design, I should say. And the reason why we chose the hybrid design is that, number one, it was the design that gave us the opportunity to adhere to all the safety protocols that were set forth by CDC and public health. It also allowed us to accommodate the greatest number of students in the in-person space. So we adopted the hybrid design accompanied with the concurrent teaching model where teachers will teach hybrid students in person as well as students in virtual. Unlike the cohorting model where students travel together, for the secondary side, we have what we call groupings. We have an A group and a B group indicated here as AABB, indicating 2 consecutive days for each and 2 consecutive days of virtual learning per week for the secondary side. Our non-traditional schools will still follow the hybrid schedule, but with flexibility because of their uniqueness and requirements in their school. So they will have a hybrid, but it will be a modified hybrid. Before moving on, we have some key dates here that I'd like to bring your attention to. On April 13th, we're so excited in the fact that we will be able to provide the opportunity for our 11th graders to participate in the ACT in person, pencil paper. And so that will be happening or taking place on April the 13th. Our first group that transitions back into in-person instruction will take place on April the 20th. On April 20th, for middle school, we will have our 6th graders transitioning back in, and we're so excited about that. And for high school, on the April the 20th, we will have our 9th graders and our 12th graders transitioning and at the same time. On the 27th, a week later, in middle school, we will complete it with our 7th and 8th graders transitioning back in. And then for high school, we will have our 10th and 11th graders coming back on the 27th. Just as we did with the elementary side of the house, families who did not opt in person on this first go around, the returning preference app will reopen again on May 3rd and remain open until May the 7th. And so our families will have an opportunity to opt in to in-person again. If they choose to opt in, they will begin attending in person on May 25th. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the hybrid model, what does it look like for high school and middle school? For middle school, students will attend 4 full days, 2 full days in person and 2 virtual days. High school will have a split day structure where they will attend school half day, have grab and go lunch, return home, and then reconnect in virtual learning at home 2 days a week with that model, and then 2 days a week virtual full time. And so as an example, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, it'll be cohort A, group A that will attend, and on Thursday and Friday in person will be group B. The unique thing about the schedule, which we're very, very excited about, is our advisory. Middle schools and high school will all have advisory, and for the sole purpose of, number one, really providing support to students around social, emotional, academic planning, and post-secondary planning. As we recall, last year, our seniors left us last year without really ample time to really support them in that transition from high school to post-secondary experiences. And even though we've been working on this all year long, this will give us an added layer of support for these students to really work on that piece to ensure that they all have viable options upon graduating. And also for the remainder of our students to really hone in on the social emotional needs of the students, as we know that many of them will need. And then our asynchronous day will remain consistent with the elementary side of the house again, and that will take place on Mondays. At this time, I turn it over to my office partner here, Mike, and he will continue to share with you some aspects of our design.
Thank you, Dr. Pryor. Could you go to the next slide, please, Barb? As Dr. Pryor had mentioned, we work closely with our principals and with some of our neighboring districts. We also work closely with our medical advisors, in particular Nurse Sally and Carrie, to ensure that we have the proper mitigating strategies to ensure that we're as safe as possible as we return. Things that we worked on is to ensure that we had a maximum capacity of no more than 15 in each classroom. Through that, you see some pictures, and I'll explain a couple of these pictures in a second, that we will maintain the 6 feet protocol, and so that we can look through the 6 feet contact tracing protocol. You'll see in some of these pictures in the upper right-hand corner that these desks are pretty tight in here. What our principals decided to do was color code, so every other desk is used on the A group, and then the other desks are used for B group to ensure that that those spacings will always remain. What we are also doing is ensuring that there are assigned seats and seating charts available in each classroom so that we're able to use those if we do have to do a contact trace. We'll have a sign-in sheet for any adults that are going to be walking in to be able to help support attempting to minimize if a special education or an L teacher is going between classes, to minimize, but we'll mark down who they are working with if it is then a close contact. Obviously, we'll continue working with our face masks. And then most recently, we began working with our food services, Chad, Steve, and then we also spoke with our medical advisors about the lunch hour for our middle schools. Primarily, we'll be using the classrooms to eat. There are a few schools that we've been working with the cafeteria, maintaining that social distancing in the cafeteria. But our hope is we've been experiencing some beautiful weather, opportunities to be outside and let the students eat outside for the day. If you can go to the next slide, please.
Mike, this is Barb. Just not hearing you super well. Can you get a little closer to your mic or put on headset? Thank you.
I'm sorry. Do you need me to do that again, Barb?
No, just continue. Thank you.
Okay. With the secondary transition times, we are going to be, when we are moving from class to class, we'll have our staff in the hallways to be able to help support moving students around. There'll be 5-minute transitions so that our hope and our desire is to be able to move fluidly without any of the close contact for longer than 15 minutes. We've worked weekly with our Madison Metro, and they've been wonderful partners with us to be able to provide bus passes, which we'll be getting the bus passes out the first week students are returning. If you've worked in the schools, you know at times there's always a few hiccups. So students will be able to ride the buses out without a pass for the first 2 weeks. So just to ensure that we have any mistakes being able to be fixed. We wanted to avoid some confusion, so we'll have the same start and end time for our middle schools. And so our buses will be able to, so our families will be able to know when the students are getting picked up and dropped off. Most recently, we work with Metro and food services along with the schools. There is a desire by Madison Metro to not have any students eating on the bus. So what we have worked on is adjusting the end time. Students will receive their grab and go lunches. When they take their grab and go lunches, they'll have approximately 15 to 17 minutes to be able to eat their food and then transition to the buses. One of the other areas, as Dr. Pryor had mentioned, is the second part of the high school day. It's targeted support. We know that we have had students with connectivity issues. We'll be able to target and be able to provide some additional small group instructional opportunities for those students. We'll be able to target and support both our special education and our L students. And also one of the ways in which, as we are coming close to the end of graduation, we've been working with student services to identify students, particularly our 12th graders, to be able to ensure that the students are meeting their graduation requirements. So at the end of the year, they are able to graduate. Next slide, please. We were fortunate enough, Dr. Pryor mentioned this, Carletra and the elementary team, Chelsea and all the administrators and the teachers, they've done a wonderful job and we were able to learn so much from them. I know Dr. Pryor and I were able to go to the elementary schools. We were able to do lunch duty. We were able to do crossing guard duty. We were able, most importantly, to be able to see the smiling eyes of both the staff and the students. We're excited. 2 weeks. Our students are coming back to the building and we're excited about being able to put up some pictures of the students and the staff. One of the things that, and it was mentioned twice already, but I want to finish this off on, the next several, approximately 100 slides, you'll see data. Our PEO has done an absolute amazing job collecting this data. The thing that we're extremely proud of is our advisors, our advisees, our school staff were reaching out, our FICE department, it showed true collaboration. Reaching out to our families, talking to the families and ensuring the importance of filling out that survey. 98% of completion rate. What we saw, that 70 and 60% in-person rate, did not see a huge discrepancy between our white families and our families of color. That says a lot We are also very aware that we have some groups, in particular our Asian community, that are not returning to school. So we're working on that to find out the why. And so that's something that we definitely want to figure out. But all this data you'll see, and we won't be going over the 100 slides tonight, but all the data you'll see trend data for elementary, middle, and high school. Then you'll also see it broken down by school. We've been studying it. We've been talking with our schools about this because, as we know, there's always room for growth, but it's just something that I believe all our schools, our leaders, the central office, we're extremely proud of the fact of the number of families that filled this out, letting us know, and then families that felt comfortable, safe enough to send their students back into the building. Thank you. Are there any?
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Hernandez, Dr. Pryor, Lisa, Carletra, the whole team. Thank you so much for the work, and thank you to teachers and staff who put in a lot of work preparing our schools for this moment. And with that, do any colleagues have questions? Chris Gomez-Schmidt.
Yeah, thank you.
You need to speak through the speaker, Chris.
Sorry, you're right. That's my fault. Okay, thank you. Thanks for this presentation. And I just want to say thank you to all of the elementary staff for the spectacular work that I have seen going on as we have welcomed students back into the schools. I had the opportunity to visit some schools and some classrooms, and the enthusiasm of the teachers and the students was amazing. And also to see how the students who were the Zoomies were being integrated into the classroom as well. I guess the first thing I want to say is that the response rate for figuring out students coming back or remaining virtual is spectacular. So thank you for all the work that went into getting those responses from families. I have just a general question. I'm sort of curious, what are the biggest challenges that we've seen with reopening? How are those being addressed, and what have we learned for reopening the middle schools and high schools based on that?
I would say what the secondary has learned, and Dr. Pryor and I, we've spent a lot of time with this, is understanding the differences with the cohort model and understanding on how we would do contact tracing as there's movement around for classes, in particular high schools. So it made us pay special attention to some of the smaller details in order to ensure that the safety protocols are in place for both students and staff.
And I'll add to that. First of all, I ditto what Mike just said. That's very important, especially around the contact tracing, having procedures in place and safety protocols in place that would make this a seamless endeavor in the event that we had to venture contact tracing. But another part for us in the very beginning, this is why we had we spent a lot of time trying to decide what design model we would deploy or employ for high schools and middle schools, and trying to accommodate the number of students that we were anticipating. As you can see, the response was just phenomenal. And, we were getting a little nervous there because, we always had to think, what if 90 to 100% responded to come back in person and you have limited spacing? And so the numbers worked out. We did plan ahead for that by estimating that if 50% decided to return, 60% or even 80%, we were prepared up to 80%. And so just learning those things from watching and observing and working with the elementary side gave us the foresight to kind of anticipate those things happening. And so things are looking good. We hope that the data continues to trend in the direction it's going in, and you never know what's happening. As we tell our building level leaders, just be prepared for anything. We never know what's going to happen from week to week. And so I just have to really give kudos to all of our building level leaders. We actually accelerated a little bit our phase in, making sure that we were still adhering to the 6 feet protocol and everything, but they made the pivots that they had to make in order to be able to do 9 and 12 at the same time. So we're excited about that. And that's just a few things that we learned from observing the process along the way.
For elementary, I think you all kind of heard about this previously. It was around concurrent teaching. There was a lot of discussion around that when we first talked about reopening. And we have really learned that you really have to get in there and do it to see the benefits of it. And we have really been able to see the benefits of concurrent teaching. Our other challenge is around spacing. It was really evident. Our buildings, some of our older buildings don't have the same amount of storage. Their room sizes aren't the same. And so that was something that we had to work together. They worked across buildings with principals working collaboratively to figure some things out. We were able to also work with some retired principals that actually went in and worked directly with principals to talk about spacing. But it was also an opportunity for us to do some deep cleaning too. I was a previous teacher and I know we like to hold on to things too. So we were able to do some of that. But really the biggest lesson is around us being innovative and what we're able to do for our students and to learn from what took place with virtual learning and how we can take those lessons and still apply them as we are doing a combination of virtual and in-person instruction. And so it's been eye-opening for us to release some of those things that we really just did just because we just did them. And we really had to examine, is that really a good practice? Or is that something that we can do differently moving forward? And so it's been a lot of really great learning lessons for us as we have phased our students back in for reopening.
And I need to add one thing, and I think this is very important. The amount of collaboration that took place in this endeavor, it was just phenomenal. I just have to give kudos to an entire departments, all of the departments in central office, how we came together and worked together collaboratively, troubleshooting, pressure testing, our thinking. It was somewhat a work of magic. And I just pray that this is something that we continue moving forward. And, I just think that, everyone would agree. It was a beautiful thing working collaboratively across the board with everyone. So I just want to say a public thank you to all of the departments.
Well, in addition to that, Dr. Pryor, the collaboration with the area school districts, it was not a competition. We all wanted everybody to return safely and successfully. And it was refreshing to be able to pick up a phone and speak to principals, central office leaders, to ask them advice on what to problem solve and be true thought partners together. That's one of the biggest takeaways that we came through, is that, again, it was always student-centered. And so that was exciting.
Mike, can I ask you a follow-up question to that?
And then real quick, I want to check, see if Dr. Jenkins had anything to add.
Oh,
Please.
I was just going to ask, since, we are just beginning to implement our high school model of returning students to in-person learning, and it's at half days, and some area school districts, as we talk about, we're collaborating, are now looking at, since they've had students back in a hybrid model, they're trying to figure out how to either do full days, or they have been in full days, and they're trying to figure out how to go back full time. How do you see our model adapting as we go after April? Is there a decision point where we're going to take a look at that again, or how do you see that happening?
I'm not sure if I can answer how I see in the future, how it happens yet, but what I can say is when I saw that there were several schools that are beginning to transition through, we contacted them and we spoke to them about what and how they came to that decision. And part of it came through that was staff readiness along with family readiness. They re-surveyed those groups to see how many were ready to come back full time. And if those numbers were comparable, then they were able to begin thinking about that spacing issue as well. But it was the readiness of feeling safety. Now we have the shots, the vaccines that are coming in, so that might be able to help us on here. But it was really that it was able to show the community, to show our staff that they could return back to school safely. They felt some comfort in it. They had a little time, and then they were able to step that up.
Okay, thanks. Carletta, can I just ask a follow-up from you two just about the concurrent teaching model that you mentioned? Is there a way that we're gathering feedback both from the families of the roomies and the families of the Zoomies as to how the model is working for them? I guess I've been most concerned about those kids that are virtual and not in person and how they're experiencing that.
Right. So we have emails that we've received from parents that have been writing in and letting us know their experience or their students' experience with virtual instruction. They are also, teachers are still reaching out and having those connections with families as well to see how virtual instruction is going, as well as how it's being done in person. Again, we want to think about those intentional strategies that we're using with the roomies and the Zoomies to be sure that those students that are still virtual are feeling part of that classroom environment, along with those students that did return to in-person instruction. But as far as like an official survey or anything that's gone out, we have not sent that out yet, as we haven't had all of our grade levels phased back in yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Chris Carusi?
I don't have anything else, just moving on.
Dr. Jenkins, did you want to
No,
speak
please.
first?
Okay.
I want to reiterate the thanks for this presentation and for all the hard work that has gone into reopening. I've been hearing good things in the community about elementary reopening so far, and that's great. Thank you so much. Super special, huge shout out to the custodians who have been getting our schools ready. It's a ton of work. They've been working on it for a long time, and the schools look great. They look really, really nice. I have 3 questions. My first question is about attendance. We've got good data on what people said they plan to do in terms of returning virtually and returning in person. And I wonder, are we collecting attendance data for virtual versus in person? And will we be able to get that attendance data disaggregated for the next few weeks, just so we can see if there are patterns in attendance? If kids who said they were in person end up switching to virtual, if kids who are virtual actually end up attending better, or kids who are in person end up attending better, I think it would be interesting to look at that data. So is that being collected, and can we see it at some point?
Chris, this is JF, and we are in fact collecting that. I can tell you that, again, collaboration across departments, it's been quite a feat to get movement. In essence, we've got Infinite Campus working in ways that we've never used it before, with an in-person cohort and a virtual cohort. Because of that, we've also had to shift all of our data systems in the background. And that's literally happening like today and tomorrow, that we're finally getting our first look at that dashboard. We've been able to run with our data department to see those data as they come in. And we've been impressed with our percent attendance. It's remained actually remarkably consistent for both in-person and also for virtual. And we'll continue to monitor that. And as we then gather additional data with additional grades coming back, we'll be able to report out on that in a more formal way.
Thanks so much, and I appreciate how hard this is, and how and the fact that you're pivoting. That's just great. Second question is, with today's announcement of the outbreak of a highly contagious COVID variant at a Dane County daycare, do we have guidelines to help us make decisions about when we have a classroom shift to virtual or have a whole school shift to virtual?
Chris, I can actually take that one as well. And obviously we're concerned whenever we hear of an outbreak. We've not seen that affecting our programs in the same way, but we continue to stay in close contact and collaboration, especially with our UW experts around the variant and what it would mean in terms of any implications as we continue to get more and more information. Going all the way back to last summer, we've had quite a bit of experience with positive cases, contact tracing, and then decision making about potential closure. And obviously, the factors remain the same now that we're reopening that were in place before. Looking first of all at the number of student and staff close contacts, the number of people that we are asking to isolate and stay away from the learning environment, the number of other student or staff absences that may be related or unrelated that would impact the ability to keep a program open, the extent to which there's blending between cohorts or where staff or students are crossing over from one group to another, the use of fidelity, the fidelity of use for our mitigation strategies, also looking at public health data and whether cases and percent positives are trending up or trending down. And then lastly, any other community concerns and exposure that might be seen in that particular school community. Taking all of those factors into account, for example, if there is an individual positive case with no close contacts, then obviously there's just a very limited impact where we're asking a few individuals to change their practice and shift to virtual. Same is true if there's just a very limited number of close contacts and no other factors that are sort of checking those boxes. As we start to see a larger number of close contacts. So for example, if we had a situation where half to 2/3 or an entire classroom were considered close contacts, then we would be shifting that entire class to virtual. But assuming that there was no cohort crossover, we would not have any impact to the rest of the programming in that particular school. If, let's say, we had multiple cases in a building where even though we didn't have crossover, we started to see multiple classrooms that were significantly impacted, similar to making a decision about our ability to stay open with weather. If we had concerns about our ability to provide staffing, we had concerns about whether or not families were comfortable sending their students, whether staff were comfortable being there, et cetera, becomes sort of an interplaying series of variables. And working our way through all of those other factors, depending on the extent to which we're seeing those factors, that would drive a decision to close one classroom, multiple classrooms, or in some cases, an entire school.
Thanks, Jay. Are we also looking at using our contact tracing to determine if spread is happening within a school versus people are just coming into the school with COVID, but we don't have spread within the school, and taking that into consideration? Absolutely.
That's one of the critical thought processes throughout contact tracing. And we've seen very, very limited spread within our school. I'm thinking only 1 or 2 situations going all the way back to last summer where we believe that that's been the case. In most often it's a student or a staff member that got exposed somewhere else, brought it into the school. And because of our mitigation strategies, we've also thankfully seen relatively limited impact on programming. I appreciate the comparison to bad weather decisions. And for bad weather, we have a statement that we can share with families about how we make our decisions. And I wonder if we could at some point get something written down that we can share with families about how we make decisions around possible COVID closures, which we hope we don't have, but could happen. So just so everybody's on the same page. We do. We actually have a flow chart that I believe has been shared in family and staff newsletters, and that principals have had to include in their own messaging around closure. We'll also be discussing kind of an updated communication protocol. So there'll be another round of communication going out to families around closure and what happens if there is a positive case. And so we'll blend all of that together to make sure our families understand those variables and factors as well. Thanks. My last question is about the fall, and I'm just wondering if we are going to be having a conversation at an upcoming meeting about what our instructional model and is going to look like in the fall. I assume we're going to try to go back to in-person, barring some kind of a disaster with COVID happening over the summer. Families need that communication, and also given the fact that most of our middle and high school kids, I think, will be getting 14 to 16 days of in-person instruction this school year, we really need to be looking at summer and fall as the time when we're going to catch up on social, emotional, and academic learning. Are we going to get a presentation on what school might look like in the fall and what plans are for the fall fairly soon?
Yes, I can answer that, and Lisa could definitely chime in as well. We've already begun to present to you this summer, but we're already thinking about the fall as well. And I just want to take a second to remind everybody, we're still in a pandemic, we still have a health crisis. And the guidance we've used has totally come from our medical advisory team, which we pay attention to the local public health, to CDC guidelines. We're working with our colleagues throughout the region, looking at what's going on in the nation. Chris, I'm glad you brought that up about the outbreak in the daycare. But things like that, we have internally, our own MSCR, have experience with doing some of those things in terms of identifying contact tracing, which Jay explained it eloquently. And I just want to take this time to say thank you to all the people you can see on the screen, but the ones behind the scenes you can't see, dealing with transportation. And I thank you, Chris, for bringing up the custodial group. There are so many other individuals that you don't get a chance to see that's pulling this thing off. And I just want to say we're very proud of them, but also the group, our parents. Chris, you asked a challenge question. It's been a challenge trying to keep, Chris Gomez, I was talking about, keeping everybody informed about this as we go. And this group that you see on the screen and off the screen, they've been doing such a fabulous job. We're building confidence, and the confidence piece, which Mike spoke to at the end, from some people going from 2 days to 4 days, is important. Even though we have the shots now, there's still some possibilities that we're working with the psychology of our students, of our staff, and of our parents. And we want to remember this is a pandemic. We want to ensure the safety of every child, every staff, and our entire community. So I appreciate the questions you guys have been raising to us, because you've made us better. Every time we hear a question, we go back and we just deliberate over it, and we come back and try to make sure we have the best plan in place. So thank you for doing that too, and thank you to our parents for being patient with us through this process.
Nikki?
Yes, I just want to piggyback off Chris and amplify what you said about the data. Oftentimes, we get a lot of data in MMSD. We're finally starting to change it. The doesn't have disability disaggregated. Is the disability, the attendance data disaggregated so that we could see how many individuals with disabilities are returning in person, And I don't need a fancy report. You guys do enough work as is. If you guys just want to send us the numbers, it might just be easier on everyone. I'm not trying to kill you here with data, just request, just want to know so that I can try and structure it better to work better with families, especially those who have kids with special needs.
Yes, Nikki, we have it broken down for students with disabilities, our low income, our L, our advanced learners, and then the racial breakdowns as well for each school.
I really appreciate it. And I really hope we can see something soon. I'm just chopping at the bit. That's just me though.
I do have 3 questions before I ask, do any other board members have questions? All right, so I will go quickly. Today is the first day that everybody 16 and up can be vaccinated. I'm curious, given, the relationship our community and Title I schools have with families, will our schools be able to be a vaccination site for families? My other question is, what are we doing to be proactive about students' mental health needs? So students who are exhibiting symptoms of anxiety or depression, things of that nature, what are we doing to be proactive about that? And then how are we being transparent with families about their choice to opt in or out of standardized testing?
Okay, very good. I think in terms of the last question, let me just state that families could always opt in or out of testing, and we've communicated this with our administrators. In fact, we're going to continue to communicate that. As you know, the federal government has also said, along with the state, and have given guidelines that we must do the assessment. But it has always been the case that family could opt out. So we are communicating that like we would have done that in the past. The other 2 questions that you asked, I think Jay Annenfeld could speak to both of those questions, as this just coming out about 16 and older can get vaccinated. We've been talking about it as superintendent, but Jay, if you want to talk about that too.
Great question, Savion. Obviously we're excited that we're at that point community-wide that we are now able to offer vaccine to some of our students. It feels like not that long ago, we were scrambling to find doses of vaccine for our staff, and just a testament to sort of our local infrastructure and in particular public health and their support, along with all the partner vaccinating agencies. We are offering our second vaccine clinic for the second dose for a core group of our staff this Friday at La Follette. And so we are willing to use our school sites, especially when it involves getting vaccine to our staff. There are implications, however, as we continue to bring students back into buildings. For example, our own vaccine clinics for staff, we've been using our school nurses, and our school nurses are going to be back in their buildings welcoming students back. And it's a little tricky for us to then have them kind of working to help vaccinate, especially community members. As we're trying to figure out the best strategy to help offer and make sure that we're connecting our rising juniors, and seniors with vaccine. It's a little tricky because the only vaccine for 16 and over is Pfizer. And I think we've gotten as far as we have by take whatever dose is available. And so it's a little trickier when we're trying to connect around 5,000 students with a particular vaccine. But we're trying to find our best ways to do that. Regarding family members and others, public health has been fantastic. They now have a link that connects people to the state vaccine registry, and you enter your address and it will show you where vaccine is available, and actually helps connect people to vaccine close to them. We've included the link to that information in I believe our last 2 family newsletters, and we'll continue to do our best to make sure we're communicating vaccine availability, but we'll continue to, in essence, recirculate public health information because they've been fantastic. Sorry, your second question on mental health. Obviously, that starts with what happens in classrooms. And we know that in many cases, what our kids need is each other, and to come back into a classroom and to be in contact and in present space with their staff and teachers. So starting with those universal strategies and setting aside time, whether it's through morning meeting or it's a dedicated advisory time for students to reconnect, kind of process what's going on. Those are those key strategies that we can leverage belonging and relationships that we think go a long way. Through that process, we are also able to identify students that have some additional needs, tier 2 or tier 3 mental health needs. And so right behind our teachers, we have our support staff, our social workers, our psychologists, our counselors, our nurses, our PBIS coaches, our behavior education assistants, who all then have training in identifying those additional mental health needs. And then we, of course, offer a tiered range of social, emotional, and mental health supports right in the building. And then all the way on through into tier 3, our partnerships with other organizations that can provide more specific and targeted mental health support as needed. And so we feel really good about being able to bring our students back. Also making sure that we're continuing to address the mental health needs that exist in our students who are remaining virtual, and including providing support for their families to have conversations about those differences as well. So a lot of pieces there, but I feel great about the supports that we have available and ready for our students as they return.
Got it. Thank you so much. All right, and with that, I think we are ready to transition to our next agenda item, which is virtual programming for 2021.
Yes, thank you so much, and we're talking about 2021, and we're looking forward to the fall. Chris asked a question, this is just a part of it, and Lisa's going to have this, and I think she's going to turn it over to TJ McCray to finish.
Dr. TJ McCray.
Dr. TJ McCray, you're right, exactly, thank you.
Thank you so much. Perfect. All right, Barbara, I don't know if you want to start screen sharing for me.
Yep, working on it, 1 second.
No worry. Hello, everyone else. How's everybody?
Doing all right.
So today, what I just kind of really want to do was bring to those in the room and those online and everywhere the first time where we're really talking about how we're going to continue to support our students as we begin to think about what fall 2021 will look like. What we do know is that a lot of our students are really thriving in an online environment. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that as a district, we are providing those options to our families to be able to just do that. So in fall 2021, what I would like to bring to you is what we're calling the Madison Promise Academy. For the fall 2021, it's very critical that what we're going to do is we will not have a full online academy. Instead, what we're going to do is just work in conjunction with DPI. We've already done everything that we need to do. And we are going to have what we're called virtual programming within the district for fall 2021. This will be a program and a school where we really are keeping the first things first, and that's going to be our students. And so we really want to make sure that we are leading with what is best for our students as we are thinking about the design for fall 2021 and as we consider next steps with online learning moving forward. Next slide for me, Barb. So first and foremost, this program in the school is going to be built on 5 different things: strong student engagement, teachers who excel at building strong relationships. We're going to ensure we have quality training for our teachers, flexibility through without, and most importantly, we want to make sure that it is a school of choice for our students. We want the students to say, I need something different, and being online is what I need. And we want to make sure like we're leading with the voice of the students. Next slide. So what we are presenting is that we're going to target between 200 and 250 students in grades 6 through 12. What will happen is they will take cores, so that's your math, science, social studies, and English language arts online, and possibly some electives. We need to keep digging into that. But for the most part, your electives and your co-curriculum will be school-based. We want to ensure that we're continuing to lead with that SEL component of it. And so we believe like that's where a lot of that can happen. We are not saying it will not happen when it's online, because it will, but we also want to make sure like that is also going to be happening. So we'll have students will take their electives and a lot of their core curriculum. So students for next year still can be a part of the band and the drama and everything else that they're used to or choose to be a part of. They will still be able to be a part of that going through this programming for fall 2021. Next slide. The staffing for next year will look like this, with 1 administrator, 7 teachers. We're looking at maybe 2 to 3 teachers at the middle school level and 3 to 4 teachers at the high school level. What's going to be very important as we begin to think about what recruitment is going to look like, we are looking for teachers who hold multiple certifications to allow us to really be flexible in how we're going to be working with the students. So we're looking for like a Savion who might have a social studies certification and a math certification. So that allows him to teach more than just one course online. So we can definitely be flexible with that as we're considering what placement and schedule is going to look like. Next slide. So what we kind of just want to talk about, we know like fall 2021 is going to be like that programming piece. But at the same time, we're going to begin to think about what are we going to do with our virtual learning moving forward. And so we really would like to see for fall, by time fall 2021 come, we have a fully virtual options for grades 6 through 12. And then what we would like to see happen is maybe like fall 2023 or even fall 2024. We are working to, by that time, to be a fully K-12 fully online virtual option for our families and students within the district. So we're definitely going to be working to move forward with fall 2021, but please know that at the same time, we're working and thinking long-term of what we're going to look like from the years to come with virtual learning. And with that, I think that's it, Barb, and I'll open up if there are questions for me.
Thank you so much. Ali, get us started.
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation and for the conciseness and efficiency of the presentation, TJ. I think using what we've learned over the last year and a half to really speak to how to strengthen virtual learning as we create kind of our own entity to provide virtual learning, is tremendously exciting. And so allows for us to really leverage the learning that's happened during the pandemic and use it to serve our community to the best of our ability. Looking at kind of how folks are returning to in-person school, how is that informing some of the conversation about the students who are likely to enroll online, and who benefit the most from being online?
I couldn't hear the rest of her question. I heard some of it, but then you broke out for me at the end.
TJ, how are we using the data about students who are returning to school right now versus students who are staying online? How are we distinguishing which students are staying online because online is the platform that works best for them versus because of the pandemic itself?
Yep. I think the very first thing is that we have to use the data that we have when we're looking at our students. And so one of that is just looking at how students are engaging right now with online. I also think that one of the things that we have to, that just because a student is not engaging, it does not mean that online learning is not for them. I think we have to make sure that we are truly getting a true story of our individual students to determine what's going to work best for them. Because there might be students who might not be engaging, but there are other rationales on why they are not engaging online, but they still can benefit from being a part of the fully online option. So I think what's going to be important is, yes, we're using the data, but the other piece of it's going to be important is really making sure we're looking at individual students when we're determining what students will be online and what students will not be.
TJ, my follow-up question to that is, how are we planning to strengthen our online programming moving forward? So kind of moving out of the triage reality of online into a more robust, more high-quality online experience.
So excellent question. And I think that that's a short-term and a long-term answer. Long-term is like we will begin to think about what our online program is, and how do we ensure that this program is, I don't want us to be following behind other districts. And so what that means is we have to design a program that will be like none other in Wisconsin. And we can do that. And so that's the avenue that we're thinking about when we think about that long term, right? Designing a program that is none like any other. Short term, it's about making sure that we are partnering with the right individuals to support us so that we can make sure that we are focusing on that high quality and rigor that you're talking about. So it's a short and a long-term plan that we're actively working with right now.
Thank you so much.
Nikki?
I don't mean to be a skeptic, but it's my nature. I think this sounds fabulous with one caveat, and that is, how do we prevent groups of marginalized students, whether it be on race, behavior, disability, etc., from being clustered online only because people don't want to schedule a specific type of student and end up using it as a punishment, not as what's best for the student. I've seen this happen in districts before, and this sounds like a wonderful opportunity for our students. At the same time, I do worry, will it increase marginalization? Will it hurt the social emotional learning of our students who are online only? And will it further separate them from their peers? How do we prevent that from happening?
So first and foremost, thank you for that question. Let me be very clear to say this. So prior to me coming to Madison, one of my roles was working in online schools. And a lot of those students were the most marginalized students, working with some of the students that I was working with. And most of them was because they were placed in situations that they had no ownership or no desire to be in. However, we see success in those students. And so, Nikki, I think that one of the things that we have to make sure as we're designing this program is that it is, and I know it was my last last bullet, but it truly is that first bullet of about voice and choice. We need to ensure that the student's voice is in the decision to determine if they want to be online. Because what we know, students succeed when they decide they want to be online. And so I think part of that recruitment process will be those individual conversations that will need to be had with students to ensure like this is not a thing of like someone told you just go here to be online, but they really don't want to, and they become further behind. I mean, so that will need to be worked into the recruitment process as we're considering the long-term plan for the school.
Thank you.
Chris Carusi?
Thanks, Fabian. Thank you so much for this presentation. I really appreciate it. I have several questions. First of all, in the short term, next year, we need virtual options. There's no question. There will still be COVID in the community. All of our kids won't be vaccinated. We need to be able to ensure that we're offering all the options that our families need to feel safe sending their kids to school. This provides a virtual option for 6 through 12. What are we doing for K through 5 or for K through 5 to ensure that they have a virtual option? And how does this fit into our bigger plans for the fall?
Yeah, that's a great question, first of all. And Dr. McCray will speak to, but I just want to speak to this. This is a part of our overall vision in terms of giving options to our family long term. Yes, COVID will be over, but we've learned quite a bit from being in virtual learning. And virtual schooling has been around a long time. But the type of virtual schooling that gives individuals options, not marginalizing them, but also giving them opportunity to accelerate dual enrollment. There are a lot of things that could happen, and a number of families have and continue to indicate that this is a positive option for them. And I'm talking about families who are generally most marginalized, have found their children thriving in this time. So we're looking at the 6th, 1st, and 12th, and then we will build it downward in terms of trying to give that opportunity at the primary level, if the appetite is there for that as well. So, Dr. McCray?
I think you hit the nail on the head. The only thing that I would like to say in the rationale between not that 4K through 12, Chris, is just because what we notice and what I know for sure is just if we are trying to build something for fall 2021 to provide them with those options. And that 4K through 5th grade, it is a heavy load that we have to consider not on us, but on parents when the students are virtual. And so we need to make sure like when we are preparing to roll out for that 4K through 5, that we get it right. That like we have to make sure we hitting the ground running to support those students and what that is going to look like for support, not just for students, but also for the parents. And so that's why that 4K through 5 option is not at the forefront when we're thinking about for fall 2021, but it's the years to come to make sure like we are building a program that will sustain.
So I appreciate that. I see 2 different levels of decision-making for the board here. One is just, we need to make budget decisions for how we're gonna, potentially spend our ESSER money and other money to support virtual learning in the fall. And we're talking about opening a new school in MMSD, potentially a 4K through 12 virtual school or a K through 12 virtual school. And to me, that's a different level of decision making. That's like opening a new charter school or a new magnet program, and we need to give the same level of consideration of the details of that school as we would do for any other new school opening. I guess my question then is for the short term, I think we do need to understand the needs of all of our students for virtual learning in the fall so that we can make good decisions about how to allocate the funds we have available to meet everybody's needs. Like it's hard to decide how to spend for 6 through 12 without knowing what we need to support 4K through 5. And for the long term, what is the process for getting the board a much, much more detailed plan about what this new virtual school is going to look like? What's, a 5-year budget for this school? How much staffing is this school going to need when it's fully open, and how are we going to repurpose and still meet the needs of our kids in our bricks and mortar schools? Because in a virtual school, you're not taking out a whole section from a school, you're taking a few kids from each grade level, so presumably the needs of those kids and the class sizes may not change all that much. There's a lot of detailed questions here, like how are we meeting the needs of SPED kids with 7 teachers? Are we also going to reallocate, using our SPED model, additional SPED teachers to the virtual school? there's a lot of staffing questions here. There's a lot of budget questions here for a long-term school that I think, like, the board needs to not make those decisions through the budget process. We need to vote on a proposal to open a new school in MMSD thoughtfully. So I really feel like our budget decisions right now really need to be focused on just meeting the needs of our kids in the fall, which we have to do and we need to act quickly on. But deciding to open a new virtual school is a different level of decision-making that I think requires much more detailed plans. I dug into a report on virtual schools by the National Educational Policy Center at the University of Colorado, and they emphasize in their conclusions that policymakers need to require that any virtual school that is operating in their jurisdiction provide information about the instructional model, the specific curriculum, the kind of learning that's going to occur, as well as details about staffing and budget and special education and ELLs and meeting all the kids' needs in that virtual school environment. We as policymakers need to consider those details before we decide to open a new school in MMSD. So I'm wondering, you've got two different processes here, a budget process for next fall and a much more detailed process for opening a new school, and what's going to happen with both of those?
Well, let me just say, first of all, those are all great things, and you're absolutely correct when you start talking about another school, and particularly when you talk about charter versus the virtual campus in which we're doing to meet the needs of where we are right now. You heard Dr. McCray talk about the short term and the long term. Our reality, and I look at it like this actually when we started talking. Can you guys hear me, first of all?
Yeah.
Okay. I know they said it was difficult to hear me. I wasn't speaking up, and I've never been told I was speaking up, okay? So, but there's a short term and a long term. We continue to talk about reimagining schools. Let me say to the world, virtual is not going anywhere. We will always have virtual in our schools right now as we begin to try to innovate. It's a part of the choices that we're going to have to make. I think the level of details that you're speaking of, Chris, you're absolutely correct. Right now, we're responding to where we are, and you see that all of our students are not even talking about coming back to school. Some of the things we're anticipating as superintendents, we will not have some of our children back in our schools, and so families are making choices about what's going to happen. That's not the only reason that we're doing this. Virtual, what we've learned doing virtual is that it's a great option for many. Some of our children will be able to access some of the classes. This can also be a part of our equity strategies. If a class is offered in one place and not in another, they can access it through the virtual. Our students who can do dual enrollment. We've had robust discussion, and I'm looking forward to coming back with a presentation about us connecting with not only just UW, but MTI, Historical Black Colleges and Universities. We have a vision for it, but in this short time coming back, we're responding to it so that we can be on time, ready this summer, this fall, but we have a longer vision that we would have to come back to the board and present. But we're not looking at charter. If you look at the statute and you look at it in Wisconsin, when you're doing the charter school versus doing the campus gives you all the things that you need. Here, if we do a charter and start attracting too many kids from the outside, that's actually going to hurt us in the budgetary process because of the way that Wisconsin, the way that we do open enrollment right now. So you raised a lot of the right things right here, but we wanted to come out and let you know where we are right now with our forward thinking, looking this summer, looking next year, and we're going to continue to work together and collaborate how we move forward. Dr. McCray.
Once again, I just, Chris, first and foremost, what you're saying is accurate, correct from your study that you just cited there, right? But it's so much more that those in the room will need. The purpose of today is really just to let you know, like, this work is moving and this is just what we are thinking. You are very correct. There are additional information that you will need to know far as instruction and staffing. And that's why one of the things we talked about was, like, there are two things that's going to be happening. In fall 2021, it's going to be about just having that virtual programming. But then we're also, for fall 2021, really thinking about what this is really going to look like for the fall of 2022. And so we need to make sure, like, we are, as I stated, really making sure we're not going fast to go slow, but we're going slow to make sure that we're going to be sustained. And so all of the things that you listed from your study, so the instruction, the staffing and support, and all those students need, that information will be presented as we keep blowing this up more and more.
Thank you so much for that, TJ. And I just want to reiterate that I think as a board, we need to agree that allocating budget for virtual options in the fall, which we need to do, doesn't imply approval of a long-term virtual option in Madison until we've seen a plan and deliberated on it and assumedly voted on it. So those are two different things.
One and the same thing.
Okay.
And that's why we're saying virtual programming. Like, that's what we want to make sure we're saying for fall 2021. It's virtual programming. It's virtual programming. It's not a fully online option for fall 2021. We are just doing virtual programming.
Nikki?
Yes.
And Chris Gomez-Schmidt.
I have to bring up the biggest legal obstacle schools and others have faced recently, which is websites that are not ADA accessible and visually accessible for the blind. In fact, you will get sued, it will happen, probably within the first 90 days if it's not done correctly. I just recently went to a conference on this, and it's a huge problem. So I'm hoping we have plans to make sure on that, because there have been companies that have been bankrupted over this, and it is an issue. That's my legal comment. My other comment is, as much as I want to vote for what happens in the fall, and I do think we need a virtual option in the fall, I just feel a lot more comfortable if we could guarantee a separate vote and put that in writing, that we get a separate vote on the other, because maybe it's the lawyer in me, I just can't relax without knowing that. I think I'm just too legal for my own good. But that's me. I don't know what anyone else thinks. I don't speak for anyone else. But especially on my website issue, if it's not 100% ADA compliant, and I strongly suggest that, no, I'm not an expert in that area. But if it's not, it could really cause a problem.
So I just want to talk about your ADA compliant piece really quick. So part of that is, as we begin to think about who we're partnering with to help us do this work, Nikki, that is one of the recruitments that I'm looking for on our rubric to ensure like that information is in place. So we will make sure like we are definitely compliant prior to. So just know that it's on my for the forefront of my mind at the same time.
That is incredibly reassuring, because that worries me quite a bit. I don't want us to get into trouble because suddenly the first student.
Let me worry for you. Let me worry for you.
That's kind of nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McCray. All right, Chris Gomez-Schmidt.
Thank you for this presentation. I'm curious if you have a timeline for when you might be able to come back to us with more details about how this programming option is going to work. It almost sounds like we might be using this as a little bit of a pilot to see how this works. And are we going to have strategies like evaluation put into place to determine how this works before we start? And so is there a timeline? Are we going to see this again in June or July, or how? I know you're still working on it, and I know you have a lot that is going on with virtual learning for everyone right now. But do you have a timeline for when we might see more details?
So I can commit to June for sure, because as I said, we are running, right? We're running. It's a slow jog, but we are running. We definitely, I feel the sense of urgency around it. But again, I want to make sure we're getting it done right. But by June, for sure, there will be a lot of things in place. So an update, if it's nothing more than a weekly board update, but you will get some update from me by June, and that I can commit to.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just curious, like a few more little detail questions. What are we using for the model for how we're designing this first programming, and what will be taught in these core courses? Like, how are we deciding that? And I'm guessing you'll have more details in June with that.
So can we hold both of your questions till June? And the rationale is because one of the things we have to do is, as we're partnering with our vendor for curriculum, because that's going to be the heavy lift. We cannot, we don't have time to build courses, so we have to partner with someone. So that is the first thing that we're working to identify that will be able to help us with that piece of it. So by June, we'll have all that ready, and I can answer that question for you to a T.
Okay, that sounds great. And then it's for 6 to 12 students, and will these students be from all over the district? So they're going to choose this option, come together online for, say, the morning or whatever component of the day, And then they would go back to their individual schools, maybe like 1 or 2 of them at this school, 3 to 5 of them at this school, and do the actual electives at the home school. Is that how it would work?
You just described it to a T. The only difference is we have to work with, think about transportation. And so we have to just be mindful of thinking about that. So it might not be half days, but more whole days at school because of the transportation piece. But in essence, the way you described it is the way we're looking for it to happen.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Dr. McCray. I just have a closing comment. Whether we know it or not, COVID in many ways reinvented education, and we have a duty to keep up with how that has impacted education. And so, this is an opportunity for the system to meet the needs of students versus the students meeting the needs of the system. For a lot of our, especially most marginalized students, they had a newfound autonomy over their education during COVID, new control over it and what they want to study. And I think this is an opportunity to maximize that and keep that going. Connecting students to apprenticeships and internships and that new flexibility to help fit the system around their needs and their lives, and connecting students with Madison College or UW-Madison as well. So I think there are a lot of opportunities here. As a board, we definitely have to do our due diligence, and we have to have intentional conversations about the short term and long term, because we will still be contending with COVID in the fall. All right, moving on to our next discussion item, 7.1, earned honors.
Thank you, Savion. And TJ, thank you for that information about virtual programming in the fall and beyond. I am super excited about this idea of doing it better than anyone else and being bold about this and really thinking about what our students need. And I just want to thank you for bringing your knowledge to the table and really signaling to the board that this is the first time we've talked about it, and we'll continue to come back and talk about it. But I'm just happy and honored that you were able to share that with us all tonight. So thank you. All right, we are going to go ahead and start with our presentation around earned honors, but I want to frame up the conversation a little bit before we start. Give a little history, because these days I am feeling like the elder stateswoman around here. And just also, help to remind us of some things that we have gone through in the past. So first and foremost, just want to remind all of us, and as we thought about putting this together, the pandemic has really illuminated for us the disparities that exist and the disproportionate impact that COVID has had on particularly African-American students and English language learners. This discussion around earned honors was not originally on the instructional work group agenda that Ananda, as the designated instructional work group chair, developed with me as the liaison. But this is the perfect opportunity to discuss this approach to earned honors as an intentionally anti-racist strategy and build on the work that we have already done to support all students. So tonight we're going to have a discussion about earned honors, which is a part of a suite of advanced learning options. So this won't be a conversation tonight about pathways or equal opportunity schools or the Office of Civil Rights resolution, or even specifically advanced learning. Those topics weren't publicly noticed on this. We're just going to talk about earned honors. And this conversation is focused on an anti-racist strategy for all students. So I'm going to take a little trip back in time. And as a reminder, we've provided information around advanced coursework, the Office of Civil Rights Resolution, EOS, and advanced learning at least 12 times since 2016, either in a memo, through consent, or in presentation format. And we had a standalone special meeting around the OCR resolution back when Matt Bell was here. He and I did a presentation on that. So also, as a reminder, we met or exceeded all of the OCR agreed upon actions in March of 2020. So tonight, we're really leading with instruction, strong curriculum and instruction. And we have a team here tonight. This is not going to be me talking. We have a team that is leading with teaching and learning and excited to share with you their expectations for rigorous instruction that all children have a right to engage in. Sharon, our Director of Advanced Learning, is here. But you know, Sharon is a C&I person first. That's one of the reasons we hired her, because she knows curriculum and instruction. She's a planner, she has experience, and that is what it's about for all children first, right? Strong core, high quality, standards aligned instruction. And Sharon's knowledge of differentiation is deep, and we are so happy that she's at the table with us. So what you see here is this team of people that's going to talk about this as an anti-racist strategy. So the last time we talked about earned honors was back in October of 2019. And we validated and discussed a few things at that time, because I actually pulled up that PowerPoint today in preparation for this meeting. So we talked at that time about earned honors as an equity strategy. And we used the equity tool to discuss the why of earned honors. And we explicitly looked at who benefits and who is burdened by earned honors. We acknowledged that we needed more student and family voice. And we committed to using those voices and the voices of the teachers to help us develop rigorous coursework, rigorous performance tasks. That's one of the things that the staff members told us was they needed more professional development, and they wanted to work more with the C&I staff around developing those performance tasks and the curriculum for earned honors. We also committed to the fact that this is a collaborative effort, and we wanted to hold each other with reciprocal accountability. Right? Our counselors needed to be a part of this process and message what we needed them to message about support for students, and putting some warm, demanding language with students to try honors courses and advanced courses. So we talked about all of those pieces last time. We're going to revisit those today. We have learned from some of the work that we have done in the past. It hasn't been perfect. We acknowledge that, but we have learned from virtual learning actually what it means to be student-centered. We've learned what a true, authentic performance task is, how it can open up doors for students, how it can help them synthesize their learning so that they become students that have this socio-political consciousness and can think deeply about the content that they're studying. And we wanted to also be sure that we did this in a fashion where schools were getting the support that they need and adding classes in a way that was supportive, and not just adding classes to add more earned honors classes. We want to be thoughtful. We want to put the right time and support in place for staff, and we want to be sure that we're doing more with hearing the voices of students and families. So this presentation, again, is about all of our students. Earned honors benefits all students, and in fact, I think benefits students, white students and students of color, because quite honestly, all of our students can and should be doing better. Even our students who are already taking advanced courses, we have room to grow. Every student has room to do better. So when we think about this work at the secondary school, I think about it as not happening in isolation from what's happening already down in kindergarten, right? We're working on early literacy and beyond to get children that good foundation. That's a success for us, that we're moving and we're going big. Gloria Ladson Billings told us last week when it came to letters training and the science of reading, go bigger. And we're going to come back to you and talk to you about that again. We should feel proud of, and the board should feel proud of, the resources that you've committed to access to world language and fine arts, and also the high school course offerings that we have in middle school. And we've actually staffed that strategy with secondary certified teachers. Before I came, and before we actually intentionally thought about that, There were students that didn't have that opportunity, and the curriculum and instruction team put that into place. So this discussion tonight, just as a reminder, and we talked about this before the meeting with my team, this is about the brilliance of all of our children. It includes Black and brown students and white students who all can achieve and should achieve at higher levels. So I am going to pass it off to our team. I'm going to start with Kaylee Jackson. There she is over there, our Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. She is going to be joined by other members of the team as we move through the presentation. And Kaylee, why don't you go ahead and kick it off for us?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa. Happy to see everyone tonight. Barb, could you go ahead and put our Earned Honors Update slide on the screen for us? Glorious. Thank you. Okay, yes, I am here with a number of colleagues tonight, Dr. Sharon Alexander, Miss Cindy Green, the high school chiefs, as well as our high school principals to provide you with an update on our earned honors. You can go ahead to the next slide. So as Lisa put it, this is an anti-racist strategy. Our Earned Honor supports our commitment to becoming, truly becoming and living as an anti-racist institution. It allows us to set a bar of excellence for all of our students, for 100% of our students. And we know that being anti-racist means that we need to review some of our structures and our practices that were built to meet the needs of some students and not all students. And this is us revisiting one of those structures. Next slide. So our outcome for tonight is that you will be provided with an update on our Earned Honors progress and our plan for future implementation throughout the high schools. Next slide. So remember, we are continuing our work from our Office of Civil Rights complaint that we had a few years ago, in which it was found that in our honors classes, in our AP classes, we had a disproportionate number of white students represented in those classes and very low numbers of African-American students and English language learners. You can go to the next slide, Barb. Currently, we have two types of honors courses within our high schools. We have a standalone honors in which the students in those courses receive access to rigorous instruction. This is the some and not all model. This is an exclusionary practice in which only some students within our high schools are receiving this rigorous instruction and capable of being able to receive honors credit. Earned honors is a model in which all, and when we say all, we mean all 100% of our students enrolled in earned honors classes are able and have the opportunity to engage in high quality, rigorous instruction and also earn honors credit. Next slide. So what is earned honors? Barb, you can go to the next slide. Earned honors is an opportunity for us as a district to make a stance and for us to see all students as being capable of honors work. It is also an opportunity for all students to see themselves as being capable of honors work. It is an opportunity for us as a district to build the supports necessary to help our students, to get our students to engage meaningfully with honors work. It is an anti-racist access and ensures anti-racist access for 100% of our students as soon as they step into the door of our high schools. Next slide, Barb. And what earned honors is it's not an extra scoop of work for some students, okay? It's not extra information for some. It's not a decision that we make as adults around who gets more, who gets extra. That's not what it is. It's not an embedded honors where we're only taking a portion of honors classes and sticking it into the earned honors. And it is not something that students need to opt into. It is an experience that 100% of students will have. And so why earned honors? Next slide, Barb. Our theory of change is that if we increase access to honors for students and build their agency in all of our kids, and all of our students, that we will see them increase in their succession and their ability to succeed in advanced coursework. We also believe that if we provide high quality, rigorous instruction to all of our students, that we will continue to see our percentage of African-American students and ELL students and students with IEPs, we will continue to see their numbers increase. We also, as Lisa said, we believe that this is good for all students. This is good for students who are also currently sitting in our standalone courses, as this earned honors model allows students to collaborate and socialize and learn alongside a more diverse population. Next slide, Barb. And I'll pass it over to Miss Cindy Green.
Thank you, Kaylee. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see you. I'm going to share a little bit of our data and what we've learned to date about our implementation of earned honors. Barb, could you go to the next slide, please? So this slide here, I will orient you to this slide. This slide here shows 18-19 courses at the 9th grade level. And what you have on the top row are the demographics of students in non-standalone honors classes. And the bottom row shows students that are in our standalone honors courses. This is the average of the demographics. The red are our white students. The blue are Asian students. Black is the yellow, Hispanic is blue, and multiracial is the light blue. What you will notice is that there is an overrepresentation of white students in our standalone honors classes. And I think one of the things that's important to understand here is that our standalone honors classes have sometimes created exclusionary spaces and exclusionary practices where only some students are provided access to those courses, which means that in ways we are denying high quality, rigorous instruction to all of our students. Years ago, we started to do some work where we looked at all of our course offerings and we started to remove prerequisites that even preceded some of these standalone honors classes that automatically created barriers for our students and limited access for our students. What we know is that every one of our students deserves the same level of rigorous instruction. And so we want to move forward with an approach that ensures everyone is getting that, and we open up the opportunity for all students. We also know that we need to dismantle some of these practices that continue to have disproportionate numbers of white students in certain courses and also close doors for some of our other students. Barb, can you go to the next slide, please? So this next slide is just an orientation slide for the slides that you will see after that. What we're going to show is students that earned honors. And as Kaylee mentioned, right now we have a variety of ways students can earn honors. You cannot earn honors credit at all, or you can earn honors by taking only standalone courses, meaning those separate courses that you select into prior to the school year beginning. Or you can just take courses that are open to every student and you can earn honors that way. Or we have some students that have done a little bit of a hybrid model, well, not the hybrid that we're used to right now, but where some students are doing some standalone classes and also doing some other classes that offer earned honors. So that's how the next data slide will be presented, and I'll orient you to it as well. Barb, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So what you are going to see on this slide is data from 16-17, which was pre-earned honors. So for those of you that have been on the board, or for those of you who have been in the school district in some fashion, you'll know that we did not start earned honors until the 17-18 school year. So what you see is the year prior to earned honors being an option in our schools. What you will see is the light blue is students that earned honors through standalone honors courses. And you will see the orange for students that did not earn any honors credit. When you go into the 17-18 slide, you will see kind of a greenish blue color that shows students that earned honors through our earned honors approach only. Students that earned it from that combination, they might have taken some courses standalone and some courses earned honors. And then those students that only did it standalone, and students that did not earn honors at all. What you will notice is that over the years, we have done a pretty good job of increasing not only honors access, but students actually earning that credit. But what you will also know in the next slides that I'm going to show is that there is definitely more students of color that are earning honors through our earned honors approach versus standalone. And what we've heard from many of our students is a few things. One, the standalone honors classes that have very few students of color in them. Sometimes our students don't feel a sense of belonging and do not want to take a course where they may be the only student of color or one of few students of color. And we also know that our students, as they're entering into high school, want to ensure that they're in a space where they feel supports and the scaffolds necessary to be successful. And so students want to choose an earned honors approach where they believe that they'll have more supports and it's a lower risk for them to be able to take advantage of that. Not lower rigor, but lower risk. And so this slide here shows the demographic breakdown from 17-18 up through the first semester of this year. And what you will notice is definitely students that have earned honors through the earned honors approach make up a much more diverse student population than our standalone honors. Very similar to what you saw in that first slide where we just showed the demographic makeup. What you will also see for this first semester of 2021, which we're really excited about, even through virtual learning kind of hiccups that we've had along the way, we've had a significant number of our students earning earned honors from that were from low income backgrounds, and that 56% of our students were students of color. You'll see that for students that accessed our standalone honors, only had 28% of those students from low income backgrounds, and 45% of those students were students of color. You also see other groups here as well. You'll see our students that have a disability. You'll see our English learners, and you'll also see gender makeup. Barb, could you go to the next slide, please? Great, thank you. What we have here goes back to our theory of change that Kaylee brought up. We know that earned honors, and Lisa mentioned this as well, it's just one of the options in our kind of overall suite of advanced courses. We know students have honors options. We know students have early college credit options. We know students are able to earn industry certification. We have a variety of ways that students are able to access advanced coursework. What we also believe is that earned honors as a 9th and 10th grade student are our launch pads for students to build their agency, build their confidence, and also the knowledge and skills to take on more advanced courses. And AP is one of those courses that we have paid close attention to. And AP is one of those sets of courses that we spend a lot of time with our equal opportunity schools in making sure that access and opportunity is open to every student. This slide here, I will orient you to, shows our students who earned honors and then the following year took an AP course. We show it for all students and we show it for our students from low income backgrounds. Let me orient you and then I will talk about the data in a little more detail. So the orange circles are students that did not earn honors credit at all. The kind of greenish are our students that earned it through earned honors only. The dark blue are our students that earned it through kind of that multiple option, both standalone in a course and also through earned honors. And then our light blue is students that earned it through standalone. In the parentheses shows the total number of students in that grade level in each one of those categories. The percentage shows the percent of students that earned honors or did not earn honors, if you're speaking to the orange bubble, and then took an AP course their following year. So if I look at 9th grade of 17, 18 of all students, just to continue to orient you to the data of this slide, and I look at students that earned honors, we had 104 students overall. 22% of those students took an AP course their following year. If we look at students that earned the combination, both earned and standalone, we had a total of 241 students there. 37% of those students took an AP course the following year. What you'll notice is students that earned honors overall have higher rates of going and launching into AP courses the following year. What I also want to call out is we wanted to look at data a different way than just racial demographic groups. We wanted to look at our students from low income backgrounds. And we thought this was important to pay attention to here because we know that AP coursework does a few things. One, the research tells us any student that takes a college level course while in high school has a greater chance of not only entering into post-secondary, but persisting. We also know that if students earn a 3 or higher on the AP exam, they can transcript college credit depending on where they enroll. We believe those are game changers for our students, especially when we know it's a money-saving opportunity. So if we think about our families from low-income backgrounds that are now having the agency and having the doors open for them to take an AP course or an early college credit course through Madison College, we know that we are not only creating better opportunities for post-high school life, we are also saving our families money. I think this is very important to point out. Could you go to the next slide, Barb? So you've heard from Kaylee and I, you heard from Lisa. We think it's also important to hear from our high school principals. We have our 4 high school principals that are also leading this work directly in their buildings with students and staff. So I wanted to turn it over to them to share a little bit. And then we have a few student voices that we wanted to lift up as well before we go through the last few slides of our presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Matt Hendrickson, principal of Memorial.
Cindy, thank you very much. Yes, I'm joined here with my colleagues from the other 4 comprehensive high schools. And on behalf of them, I want to share a brief statement that we put together. As anti-racist leaders, we, the principals of Madison's 4 comprehensive high schools, believe that the collective decision to move forward with earned honors moves us closer to inclusive policies that allow all students to thrive. We are committed to ensuring that all students have access to and that all teachers provide rigorous and relevant curriculum, and this earned honors does this for us. We remain committed to doing better for our students, and we know that being anti-racist educators means moving beyond conversations to actively dismantle systemic barriers to opportunity. And again, I want to thank my colleagues.
Thank you, Matt. And we know all 4 principals are here for when we open it up for the question and discussion if there's specific things board members may have for them. Barb, can you go to the next slide, please? So this next slide is just a few student voices. Our students are not here with us tonight, but we wanted to lift up some of the voices from our students as we have had many discussions with them, as our principals can talk more about when we get to that point. But here's just a few quotes from our students. I'll pause for a minute to allow each board member to read these if you haven't read them before. Thank you, Barb. Could you go to the next slide, please? So Kaylee and I are going to talk about the next steps. As Lisa said, we have an imperfect system. We have an imperfect system right now that doesn't have the same access and opportunity for all of our students. We know many of our students, specifically our students of color, have been shut out of some of these opportunities. But we also know as adults, we have work to do to improve both the dismantling of the systems, but also improve some of the work as it relates directly to earned honors. And so in our commitment to this work, we know at the system level, we've got to really think about kind of our high school course trajectory. And what does that mean for K-8? How are we thinking about a system that is ensuring that we are having every student receive high quality instruction? We know that's starting with the early literacy work and it's going beyond. We know we still have work to do in creating more early college opportunities for our students so that students have lots of choice in the types of early college credit they want to earn while still in high school. We also know there's some technical pieces that a lot of people don't see because it's more behind the scenes, but it's really important for this earned honors work to ensure that it isn't burdening teachers and to ensure that we're taking the biases out of the decision-making of who is earning honors. And that technical work is a work in progress that we're continuously working to improve. I'm going to toss it to Kaylee so she can talk about the curriculum and instruction.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. And so with the curriculum and instruction, we know that we have an incredible need to pause and to look at the core. To look at our core instruction to increase the level of rigor that we are teaching within all of our classes. And that's why it's incredibly critical that we do this as a district initiative, that we move together in this so that we are moving together to ensure consistency and coherence against across our 4 high schools. It was stated earlier in this board meeting that in the standalone honors and in the earned honors courses, it looked very different, right? That shouldn't be the case. That shouldn't be the case. We should see high level of rigor and an equal quality of programming and instruction across every single one of our classrooms. And the work of curriculum and instruction is to ensure, number one, that our teachers have those materials, and number two, that we are providing them with the professional learning to make that teaching come to life, and to also show through their instruction a true belief that every and all students are capable of reaching this high quality of rigor.
We also know that in any good change management strategy, communication is key. And we know that we need to continue to do frequent communication, but also work on efforts to improve communication where necessary. So we want to make sure everybody understands earned honors and do a lot of myth busting where there may be some misconceptions out there around earned honors. We want to make sure as families and students voice and choice, just like TJ said, we talk about that all the time at the high school level. We want to make sure families and students understand their course selection options. And we really want to work on that advising piece, right? We want to work with our counselors on strengthening those interactions so that students are taking the courses and making the right decisions. We heard from the student today in terms of the middle school to high school transition and counselors advising in that. So we know that that also is a work in progress. Barb, could you go to the next slide, please?
Cindy, I would also add, just to tag on to your counseling piece, right? That counseling is important in middle school, right? As we get children ready and they know the opportunities that can exist when certain courses, when they enroll in certain courses. So the board just approved additional counselors at the middle school. And that also was part of the overall strategy to help children and families be informed so that they know the choices that are there for them and the opportunities that exist because of the choices. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you for that, Lisa. So now we want to talk about our timeline. And Kaylee said we were going to do a little pause so that we get this right. I'm going to turn it over to Mike and he's just going to walk us through the timeline. Barb, could you do one more click? Thank you.
At the beginning of this, Ms. Kivstead mentioned that we have been laying this foundation. The foundation was laid several years ago, 2016-17. Our principals and staff began actively reflecting and identifying instructional beliefs, policies, and practices that have perpetuated these racial disparities in achievement, opportunities, and a basic sense of belonging. COVID hit, we've committed to not return to the status quo. We've also committed, this board has committed to be an anti-racist organization. One of the ways that we are looking at being an anti-racist organization is to reflect and to think about what practices we have set up that perpetuate these. I was thinking about a conversation I had with students in 2016-17 when we began attacking this, our affinity groups. And a student told me this. He said, you know, Ms. Fernandez, in 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal. 125 years ago. 67 years ago, Brown versus Board. It said no segregation, but ironically, the same year a pilot program came up which started AP classes, which was a system that school districts allowed to segregate children. We've looked at our data. We're allowing it to happen. In 2021 or 21-22, we're still going to be working through with having standalone options and our earned honors options. However, if we have less than 15 students that have signed up for the standalone option, we will look at earned honors. And that is an allocation work through 22-23, all ninth grade, excuse me, all ninth grade core teams are going to be earned honors. Our standalone honors will no longer be offered to ninth graders in 22-23. In 23-24, all 10th grade core teams are going to be earned honors, and our standalone honors no longer offered to our 10th grade students. I'm excited about this work. We started it in 2016-17, and we had to learn, and we learned from some mistakes that we made. I'm proud to finishing off this. And now I think we're ready for questions and answers.
Mike, I would just add, and I thank you for going through that and articulating that slide. Just wanted to add that, right, that vertical articulation that I talked about a little bit earlier, that emphasis around early learning and foundational skills and letters training, that early learning and beyond. What we're talking about at the middle school around literacy and all the access that we're providing, that is all going to articulate up through to the high school students and give them, right, the experience and the strong core instruction that they need to be successful in their courses. So not only are we talking about, as Mike described, right, this sort of horizontal articulation 9th through 12th, but it's also vertical. We have to pull that thread through so that we give students the strong experiences that lead them up to being 9th graders in high school. Okay, I think that was the end of our formal presentation. And I will pause. And Dr. Jenkins, is there anything that you want to add before we continue with discussion?
I'd just like to add that this is a discussion we're having. We've been on this journey, and we're looking to continue to refine ourselves. We began this work before COVID, and we are on a journey of the district becoming an anti-racist district, and we're just looking at what can be the best practice. I can't be more prouder of the meeting that I was invited to last week. I'm losing track of my days with the principals, and I also had an opportunity to hear from some of the staff. Just very proud of you guys, the way that you're leading this work, and just proud to be here with you. And thank you to all of our curriculum team. It's a total collaborative effort.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jenkins. I see, oh, I'm sorry, did you have anything to add? Oh, okay, Nikki?
Yes, I have 3 questions, 1 comment, if I may, Chair.
Go ahead, Nikki.
In the first graph that Cindy showed, and my eyesight is not the greatest, I didn't see where the disabled were included in that first graph. I may have missed it. Were they in there? Because I know they were in the third one, but not in the first one, so I may have missed it vision-wise.
Cindy, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, Nikki, the data is in there. What you will notice is that the percentages are small, so you don't actually see the percentage. We definitely can work with our RPO team to get you the actual percentage if you would, but the data is there for our students with disabilities.
Two, we have, you stated it's available for every student. I'm glad on that because starting in 2017, the only sentence we had a disability representation was on dual exceptionality was one sentence in the entire program. And I'm really glad to see that that's being corrected. And want to make sure that that was one of my comments. My second question is, are students on shortened day or in a segregated classroom still able to take honors courses?
Mike, do you want to answer that? So Nikki, just so I'm clear, you're talking about shortened day as per an IEP team decision?
Correct.
So Nikki, typically, well, you know this better than most. We're not going to have a shortened day unless it's the IEP team's decision. We've really tried to go away from shortened days. However, if there is a shortened day, we typically try to allow access to core content areas. And our earned honors component will be focused around the core content. We didn't necessarily have some of these data points, but as you know, we lived and breathed this when we were, I don't want to use the word pilot because it sounds opt out, but I'm going to say pilot. When we piloted this in 16 or 17, 18, and what we did see, and it included our special education students that were working through this, is that our standalone honors classes, when I say ours, I mean East High Schools, there was 1% special education students that earned it. When we looked at the earned honors, I believe it was 18. I just looked at it earlier. It might be 23. I know that's different numbers, but special education students earned honors there. So there's additional access points. I want us to think about the fact that you can still scaffold and allow rigor. It's almost like the proficiency component of standards, having access to show that you understand and you're working through the standards work. And that means that's where we say all. And so Nikki, I understand, and we would never, I don't think anybody on here with the screens on would ever endorse anything that would keep our special education students not having that opportunity.
I appreciate that, Mike. And this last thing is basically a comment. And I've been here since 2017. I've watched the honors debate. I've watched the desire to be an anti-racist school district. I'd like to challenge us to go one step further and be an anti-ableist school district as well. I think we could do it. I think that we should do it. As Mike said, those court cases of history are important. And so is in 1973, IDEA was passed, which was the first time disabled children were allowed to enter a school building. Or in 1990 was the first time the ADA passed so that children weren't thrown out of the school building. These are all our histories, whether they be black, brown, disabled, and we honor them. So I think not only can we be anti-racist, and we have to be, absolutely, without a doubt, but I think we can be anti-ableist as well. And I think we should strive to both. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing, so thank you.
Please go, Chris.
Thanks, Fabian, and thank you so much for this presentation and for all the work that went into it. Much appreciated. I have one detailed question about a slide, and then I have some bigger picture questions. And my detailed question is the slide comparing the demographics of earned honors and standalone honors classes was from 1819. And I'm just wondering if you look at the 1920 and 2021 data that we have, if we've seen a demographic shift at all in who's in those classes.
Cindy, go ahead.
Yeah, and Grady Brown is on here also from our PEO team. But why, one reason I'll tell you why we used 1819, it was the last time we had a full year of courses that ran, and so we used that. So Chris, as you know, last year we had a semester where we were allowed to offer earned honors, then a semester when COVID hit. This year we're kind of halfway in. So we wanted to use a year where we had stability, and so 1819 was the year for that.
That said, we should have demographic data from 1920 and 2021. Have we seen any shifts? I'm just curious. Even if the data is a little bit different because it's only half year, it's still, especially 1920, it's kids who signed up for both. I'm just wondering if we saw a change.
Yeah, Chris, we can look into that. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but we could definitely look into that in terms of if there's been shifts.
Okay, that would be really helpful. Thank you. So I really appreciated the remark that part of being an anti-racist organization is taking the time to reflect and think. And as we approach this decision, I just have some big picture questions that are not intended to, skew the conversation one way or another, but just to help us reflect and think. And my first question is, we asked what is earned honors, but I feel like we need to take that a step back and just ask, what is honors? Our current standalone honors classes were developed with the intention to provide students with work that is broader and deeper and more complex than regular classes. And I think that philosophy also describes AP classes. It's work that's broader, deeper, and more complex in a separate class. And earned honors is really different in that it's the same work for everybody in the class. And the honors designation isn't about the work, it's about mastery that students demonstrate. So what is honors kind of shifts from what work is done in the class to what level of mastery a student demonstrates on, the same kind of work that's offered to everybody. And I think, we can decide that that's a shift we want to make, but I think we need to call out that this is a really, really different approach to how we define honors, content versus mastery. And feel free to comment on that if I'm not quite getting it right, but my understanding of earned honors is everybody learns the same thing in class, and there are some assessments that determine whether or not a student gets an honors designation in addition to their grades. So again, that's about master performance.
So Cindy, do you want to take a shot at that? And then Sharon, I'd also like to hear from you about that. Thank you.
So I'll start. So Chris, that definition that we created was created when we began the work for earned honors, and when as a district we had to define honors across the board. So being more complex, deeper, the level of rigor is what we want for every student in every classroom. And that is the work that we started when we implemented the Common Core back in 14-15. And regardless of what classroom you go to, and our principals are here, can share more, there's still work to be done there. So yes, that is how we define honors. And yes, that's still the complexity and the rigor that the earned honors has. I think what you're talking about is the criteria in terms of how we determine if the student met that or not does vary from a standalone classroom to an earned honors classroom. See if Sharon wants to add more to that.
Yeah, I think the additional pieces I just wanted to add is that our honors programs are going to continue to look at the rigor. It's why we needed to slow the process down and really look at our timeline, primarily looking at the curriculum work that must be done this summer to engage and make sure that these classes are as rigorous as possible. Because if we're doing things that are just, as Chris just said, she said, well, it's kind of the regular class. It shouldn't be. It has to have a high expectation and rigor component aligned to the standards. And that work still needs to be worked on, which is why the process needs to be slowed down, really getting groups and teams of teachers together this summer, collaborating, looking at the standards and ensuring that the rigor is in place. So once that rigor is in place, then you identify those performance assessments, make sure that they are aligned, those rubrics are strong, and you're really confident about the students not just only having the mastery, but having that rigorous attempt, that it doesn't matter if you're a special ed student, an ELL student. The struggle and concern is that it must start this summer. I think those are additional pieces that have to be done behind the scenes and things that we knew are part of that technical timeline.
Thanks, Sharon. Is there a principal, high school principal who would like to add anything to that?
Sharon, that was really helpful. Thank you so much. I think it would be helpful to understand better, and we don't have to like delve into it now, but I feel like there's not a clear understanding in the district of differentiation in earned honors classes. Like I've heard there is no differentiation in earned honors classes, and I don't know if that's true, but I think that needs to be clear to families, to staff, to students. If instruction in earned honors classes will be differentiated based on student need, or if everybody's just getting the same thing, because I've heard all sorts of different answers to that question. I think before we move forward with this change, everybody needs to understand the expectations for teaching and learning in an earned honors class.
If I can address that, I just want to thank Amanda Jamay is our advanced learning coordinator, and she has been behind the scenes working with this concept, this idea, working with the principals, the assistant principals, and many of the earned honors teachers. We have been very specific in the AL department to put a focus in 9 through 12. We've really been a K through 8 AL program and wanted to really have a focus so that we had individuals that were supporting the teachers and the work at that high school level. So she's been working behind the scenes with earned honors, and traditionally I think we can definitely say that there's been an adjustment. She's looking at differentiation being one of the pieces that we provide also additionally over the summer. PD is just as critical as the curriculum, so those are the types of things that Kaylee spoke about. It's low and slow so that we can make sure we do it right, but the curriculum has to be strong, the rigor of the assessment, and then ensuring that our teachers feel like they have the necessary tools to be successful. All of those pieces will come into play as we start working and collaborating together.
Cindy, can I test something here, Cindy and Kaylee? When we were first thinking about, right, this idea of earned honors, the idea was that students could choose, right? Could choose to do activities, performance tasks in order to earn honors, and they would know about that ahead of time. Is that still the case in our earned honors classes? And what are ways that students, can communicate with their teacher about that?
Well, go ahead, Kaylee.
I was actually going to let Sharon respond to this one.
Again, I'm a little newer to the earned honors conversation, but again, there had been in the past an opportunity for students to choose. I believe our option now is that we'd like to have students again have that opportunity, take the performance assessment. There is a necessary score that a student does have to meet to earn honors. So being able to again ensure that the students have that content, they're prepared for the assessment, they do their very best on that assessment, get that particular score, and then again receive the earned honors. I don't see a student not wanting to have that as an opportunity. They're being prepared for it, and again, just being able to be assessed on what they know and being able to demonstrate that will be their ability to earn that credit.
Thanks, Sharon. I just wanted to clarify that for folks, so thank you.
That one of the things, Lisa, was that's when we used to have embedded honors versus earned honors. And so the embedded was kids after that could choose, and it was kind of you do more. And we don't believe that honors is about more. We believe about the complexity.
Right.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'll just pause it.
If I may, can Mr. Carney actually is a principal now, but he was an honors teacher, an earned honors teacher as well. Brendan, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and first of all, to respond to the question about differentiation and to respond very succinctly. Yes, absolutely. Any earned honors class, or in fact, any class in our school building, is going to make it incumbent upon the teachers to differentiate curriculum and instruction and assessment for all the kids who are in that room. And I would just say, I have a lot of faith in our teachers to be able to do that. In fact, I think heterogeneous groupings of students present all kinds of opportunities for students to learn with and from one another that we don't currently have in our system as it stands. In fact, I think families come to this district for those opportunities. I did as a parent and as a professional. And as a teacher who has experienced both, I can attest to the fact that what's good for students is good for teachers as well. And many of our teachers will tell you that. When the students feel valued and respected and challenged and they are not separated from their peers, it's better for teachers too. And absolutely, we will continue to support teachers in what differentiation looks like and in designing rigorous curriculum and instruction for all students, but not because the word honors is attached to it, because that's what it means to be a teacher. To that point, I just believe wholeheartedly we can teach all the kids in the same room. It's happening throughout most of their academic careers before high school. It's happening in districts across the country. I can tell you I've come here from other places and most recently from New York City. And this is the only school district I've been in where students are taught in honors and non-honors classes across all core content areas in 9th and 10th grade. We're not the norm on this. In fact, there are school districts very close to us who are further along with this than we are, and school districts who should be looking to us to be an equity model in light of who our students and families are and who we say we are. We're chasing them. So I would just say, as Mike noted, I came here as a teacher. I taught honors and non-honors English. The bottom line is whatever the intentions, whatever the efforts that have been made, our current honors system has the effect of sorting students by race, by ethnicity, by language, and by disability. And I remember very well my first day as a teacher at East. I taught a non-honors class first hour. There may have been one white student in that class. I taught an honors class second hour, and I think there were 3 students of color. And that's in a school that's fully 2/3 students of color. It was jarring. It felt like working in more than one school at the same time from one period to the next. And I've seen the kids walk down the halls here and walk into different classrooms and what impact that has on their learning and their motivation. So to be clear, there's been work on this. We've removed prerequisites. Recommendation letters are no longer required. We have actively tried to expand opportunities for students, encourage their participation in advanced coursework, and we've seen some gains through the work with EOS. But we have hit a wall with this, and the students will tell you if you ask them, when they look into an honors classroom, and I'm speaking specifically to students of color, I've talked to even very recently about this, and they don't see students who look like them and the numbers that they see those students in the hallway. It has a big impact on the decisions that they make. So I would just say, if that is the effect of our current system, whether or not it's the intention, we need to think about whether the system requires changing. And I do hope for you to hear from these students directly themselves, because they can speak better and more powerfully to it than I can. But I've been hearing it from them for every year since I've been here because we've been asking. So in short, I think we can do this. I think we can handle it. I think our teachers can handle it. And I think the students deserve it.
And I'm sorry. Gloria.
Oh, please go ahead. Oh,
I still have 2 more questions.
okay, yeah.
Okay.
2 more.
Yeah, so my second question was just around, getting very specific. I think you guys did this in your presentation, but I feel like we need to get very specific about the problems that we are trying to address with this shift to earned honors and away from standalone honors, and use that list of, problems or issues we're trying to address when coming up with a way to assess whether or not this is working. So, I've heard loud and clear that we're trying to eliminate segregated classrooms in our schools and make sure that all of our students have access to a richer educational experience by being in diverse classrooms. I think that, we need to call that out, and we need to figure out how we're going to assess whether or not that's working as we move forward with earned honors. Likewise, we've got opportunity gaps. We've got the issue of students not seeing themselves as honor students. We've got bias and identification. I think we need to get really specific about what we're going to measure to understand if we've had an impact and if we're succeeding with this change. And so that's why I asked what are the problems we're trying to solve with the switch to earned honors, and is earned honors the best solution? I think we have to be honest as we move forward and assess whether or not it's working and it's achieving the goals we want to achieve, as we should do with any change that we make in our schools. So I don't know if you guys want to respond to that, or I can move on to my third question.
I know, Chris, thank you for that question. And Cindy and Mike, if help me remember, but when we presented in October, we had talked about doing a more in-depth evaluation. I want to say in 23, 24, when we had matriculated more students through the system and earned honors. But Mike and Cindy, help me with that. Is that recollection correct?
That is correct. One thing to note is that our first set of students that had any exposure to earned honors are seniors right now. So we haven't even seen what happens when they left us. And we know that first year it was limited in the courses. But we have talked about around 23, 24, and we were going to tie it to some of our other plans of doing a more formalized evaluation if that was the way we were going to go. We haven't landed on the details of that, but that was our conversation.
Thank you, Cindy.
And Lisa, can I add one thing, please?
Of course, certainly.
So I appreciate, Chris, you're asking us to think about this in 23, 24 is when we'll be able to begin working through that. But I wholeheartedly believe that if we look at trend data, the system that we built, it's the results that we have, and it's a perfect system. The opportunities, so we need to, the opportunity gaps would has caused this separation of students, and so we know that it's working for some, but we also know it's not working for a lot of students. And I think that's why we're looking at using this next year as that, again, planning time with professional development. Being able to have a true focus on this. We have leaders in the building right now that are ready to put their hands up and do the work on this as well. And all of that is going to be laying that foundation so we have true fidelity in making this happen and doing a good job with it.
I think in addition to fidelity to the model, we also need to look at, as we try this and expand it, whether or not we're actually increasing the rigor in all of our classes as a result of doing this. I think that's a really important question to put out there now and be intentional about making sure we answer as we move forward.
Yeah.
My last question, oh, go ahead.
That's all right. Sometimes when I've had conversations with adults, primarily non-people of color, we get down to the root of, I have a concern if there are people that are having that question about the rigor of the class, because now there are more students of color in that class. And that, to me, it might be an unconscious way to say, but we are then perpetuating that, the bias that our students of color can't do this. And so that can't be the only reason why we're thinking, because we have to trust our teachers to be able to do rigorous work and asking our students to do rigorous work, as opposed to, for lack of a better term, dummy it down because now they're black and brown faces in there. And I don't think that's what you meant, but unfortunately, I think that's a lot of conversations that are occurring, that people are afraid of this. And I think about myself from doing this work in this district for 14 years, for having a career on this, is the equity hoarding part seeps in, is because now there has to be sharing some resources. And I don't think that's what we want to do. I hope that's not what we want to do here.
Can I add to that, please?
Go ahead, Marvin.
And, just listening in on the conversation here. I'm from a district, or I should say a state, that requires all children to take 3 AP courses upon graduating from high school. I led a school that was 99% African American. All of those children that graduated, and I had a very high graduation rate in the 90s. All of them met that task. Mike really elevated something for me. It's teacher mindset. When a little kid, Marvin, sits in their class, how do they see me? It pushes me to go back to this, what I've been pondering this whole conversation. This is deeper than earned honors. Let's call it what it is. We said that we're aiming to be an anti-racist district. Well, let's reflect for a second. Brown versus the Board of Education, 1954, right? We had to fight that. We put things in place, and I'm gonna show you how it evolved. 1833, Alabama Slave Code. Well, we have something in place now. We have our early literacy program where we're trying to deal with that again. We have Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896, right? We had to put something in place again for Black and Brown, again. So when I come to our district and I look at it like this, you know, in all my readings, they talk about racist practices being camouflaged by policy and practices. Okay, we've identified a practice in some of our schools, most of our schools, that creates an imbalance. It's not equitable for all children. If we're going to be an anti-racist district, when we see these policies or practices, we can't only identify them, but we have to take action and do something about them. I applaud all of these principals on the platform tonight to be here collectively standing against what's currently in place because they know better. And to know better is to do better. And so when I think about this, I have to ask ourselves the question. All right, we see this practice. When you go into our schools and you look at standalone honors, what do you see? What do you see? You don't see Marvin in there. You don't see it because there's a belief system that takes place not only at the high school, but let's go back to the middle school. Now they marked me already as not being capable. Well, this is nothing more than what they say. What is it? Scientific racism. We have this internal belief that we have a racial group that's inferior to others. And so when we talk about teacher practice, you know, hey, this work is deeper than just making a decision to go to earn honors. We got to change mindsets. We got to educate teachers to see students as equal. They got to believe that they can do it. Perhaps they need to go to Georgia and see all the Black and brown children actually getting 4 and 5 AP courses, completing them, and many of them scoring 3 above. It can be done. We have a systemic problem that we have to address. And I applaud the principals of doing this work that we're doing. And I like to say in closing, the work that we engage in is revolutionary. It's not comfortable. If it was comfortable, everybody would be doing it. It's very uncomfortable, but it takes courageous leadership to do it. And I just think, and I know this is not up for a vote, but I think it's, you know, that our thinking begins right here on this platform, the people here. And so I challenge everyone on here to see it for what it is. Don't allow others to do to Marvin what they're doing to people that look like me. Give me an opportunity to demonstrate that I can handle the rigor, okay? And let's get our teachers to the point where they're not dumbing down the curriculum because someone of my complexion is sitting before them. I just had to say it. Thank you.
Marvin, thank you. Devon, I know you have some words that you want to share with the group.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Dr. Pryor and Brendan and everybody who shared, the only thing I want to just add on, like similar to Dr. Pryor's thoughts and experience, just like growing up, I was the first of 6 to graduate high school. And so I'm the 5th in the order, birth order. And I'll tell you, like, systematically boxed out of honors and AP, but I'm saying, like, not ever even understanding what an honors or an AP class is, right? And so it's tough to go for something you don't know. And then you start feeling this inferior piece. Who else feels like me, right, at my school, right? Who else is nervous to even take that leap because you don't even know what it is? I'm saying if we broaden the franchise by approaching it, our work this way changes everything, right? And so Dr. Jenkins, I talked about my big brother, right? Who said, if I had a principal like me, flattered me. I didn't know my big brother liked me like that. He said, if I had a principal like you, I might not have made a dozen of the decisions that I made, right? And again, I'll tell you my soul story some other time, but I mean, that means a lot, right? If you open this door for him, he would have been that corporate lawyer he always wanted to be, but never had the chance to be because nobody gave him that chance. And that's just the one thing I would say, like, there's a very human aspect that we just stop, pause and say, who's being affected, right? It's kids, right? Didn't get to take an honors class until I was a junior or senior, trying to think, I'd look back at my transcript, but I was systematically boxed out, right? But why? So I guess I'm fired up. I know what this means for students. I know what it meant for me. I know what it means for my nieces and nephews. So that would just be my appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jenkins, have you got a comment?
Well, actually, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Baran, because at the meeting the other day, with all the principals, her staff made a presentation, and if you could just lift the voice of your staff, Dr. Baran, and their feelings about moving forward, this advanced work.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. My staff is fired up, and I think the staff of all the high schools is fired up because they finally see a way out of this box of racism that is built into our system at the core. My staff is fired up because they've been working together on taking a look at their curriculum and ensuring that it's anti-racist, making sure that the text, the images, the stories they tell, that's part of this earned honors work. This is the time for us. This now is the time. There's an opportunity for an entire generation of kids to enter high school and never experience racial segregation by class level. It's now. We're so ready for this work. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Stephen, can I respond quickly?
Sure.
Yeah,
real quickly.
Yeah, real quickly. Dr. Pryor, Mr. Hernandez, and Mr. LaRosa, I really appreciate what you just shared. And I wanted to clarify that what I asked about rigor was not, I think, what you heard. What I really was trying to do was reflect back what I heard earlier in the comments about what is honors, and that's all. So, but I like where the conversation went. I appreciate your comments, and I took them to heart. So thank you.
All right, Gloria, then Chris Gomez-Schmidt.
Well, I mean, I think, I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, and I think that is what Chris, Chris's question is, it comes from questions that we receive out in our community, right? These are questions that people are asking. I've heard them for the past couple of years. It is a reality of what our parents, our families are asking. But on the other side, I just really want to commend our staff, our principals, for this work. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I particularly in high school, East High School has done a phenomenal job the past couple of years at Earned Honors. My son went to East High School, benefited from Earned Honors. He's now working at the Capitol, very successful. And I just want to acknowledge that. I've seen a transition and hearing from our families, our Black and Brown families in particular, about how this is impacting their child's life and in their trajectory. So I really do feel that this is, when we talk about Black excellence, when we talk about being anti-racist, that this is the work that needs to be done. So I really want to commend you for the work that you're doing. The question I had was, when we talk about cultural responsive teaching, when we talk about getting more Black and Brown teachers in the classroom, I think that has to be part of, really working, and I'm sorry if I missed this when I was out of the room, but what are we doing, if anything, around getting Black and Brown teachers in our Earned Honors classrooms, in our honors classrooms, and, bringing in culturally responsive teaching, because I think when you walk past the classroom and you see all white students, or you don't see a lot of students of color, students of color are gonna, they're gonna take that, and they're not gonna be so interested in being part of that, unless they feel like they themselves see themselves in that classroom. They feel like they belong, and that it's their classroom. And so I just, want to throw that out there. What are you thinking about and doing in regards to getting more teachers of color in the classroom?
I guess I can start, and then Mike and Marvin, I know that you would have more to add to that. As we went through the allocation and strategic staffing process, I know that as the principals designed their staffing plans with the particular courses in mind, that they talked about how they're managing the talent in the building, who's teaching what classes. And that was something that we included in the phase 3 of our staffing process. But Mike and Marvin, is there anything you might want to add on that? Mike, I see you're ready.
I think two things, Lisa. One, you helped us tremendously by the handbook language from the last vote on helping us figure out ways to retain the staff that we are recruiting right now. And with the switch of, we have to remember, I haven't been a principal for a few years, but I know people owned honors classes. And one of the first steps that I had to take is to say, we are sharing honors classes. We are going to have more than 1 or 2 or 3 people own those classes. And so now with the earned honors, you have in your core content areas, the high schools are blessed on the fact that we have a higher percentage of staff of color in those buildings. There's more opportunities now to see a mirror model in front of them in a social studies class or an English class. And so that's one of the first ones. And then people, you build it, they will come. People see that our high schools are going to fight this fight. That's a recruiting tool in itself. We will get staff because they want to be part of this movement.
I really have nothing to add to that. Mike really touched on my point about having those teachers that reflect who they are. But it also brings back to something that was said early on in this space when we talked about the counselor in middle school and in high school, advising. And, I'm sorry, I was sitting here thinking, and I'm like to myself, whether or not the Black and Brown getting the same advisement and being encouraged to engage in those courses. And so this perhaps levels that playing field so that they will have a sense of belonging and know that they belong in those courses. So that's the only thing I want to add to that. But thanks, Mike, for elevating that piece, because I think that is very, very important.
All right, thank you. And so the queue is going to be Chris Gomez-Schmidt, Ananda Ali.
Yeah, thanks. It's hard to know where to start because I've been invested in this work and this discussion for a decade in trying to figure out how we move our district in the direction of addressing disparities in achievement, starting at kindergarten, and access to opportunities and access to learning, and trying to figure out how to identify talent in diverse groups of students. And so I appreciate you bringing this to discussion before we change our whole model. It's important we discuss the goal of what we're trying to achieve with earned honors, and I heard a lot about that today. I'm glad you mentioned the strategies at the earlier grades, because the disparities that we see at the higher grades in access and preparation for honors options are a grow your own problem. It's not surprising that we see the gaps that we know exist in elementary and middle schools continue into high school. And so I just have seen a lack of investment at the K-8 level over the last 10 years that I've been involved in this discussion to really make sure we are recognizing talent, recognizing students and what they can do over the years to prepare them for the rigorous options that we have available at high school. So I am right there with you about the outrage, about this is not acceptable, the disparities that we see. But my question is that we spend a lot of time talking about making sure that we have a lot of options available for students, that what we offer is not a one-size-fits-all. And it seems like with the earned honors, we are moving our honors options to a one-size-fits-all. And so I guess that's my first question. How do we sort of look at that, where we're actually removing different options that students can have to a one-size-fits-all model.
Marvin?
One short comment on that. And I was at,
Yeah.
it's a question, okay? One size fit all. Do you not think that all children should be able to engage in rigorous teaching and learning experiences? And I'll leave it with that.
Absolutely.
If you call that a one size fit all, I'm all in, one size fit all. I think we answered that question earlier tonight when we said that we have differentiation in every course we teach. That's just a best practice, right? And so it's not a one size fit all. This is about access for all. And so I think we need to change the first word to that, access for all. And I'm very passionate about that. I attended school in two places, in Connecticut and in South Carolina, and one clearly superseded the other. And in the South, I was told that I was not college material, you know, and that was a mindset of those individuals there. Well, I went on to college and I graduated in honors, not only for my bachelor's, but my master's, my specialist, and my doctorate. But this was a kid where somebody tried to label. And so, when we talk about one size fit all, that's not what this is about. This is about leveling the playing field of providing access to all. That's what's most important right here. Access for all. I don't see why that would be so troublesome when we say access for all. Collectively, we make each other stronger. We make each other stronger. And I hate to say it, we see color, black kids in room with white kids, they make each other stronger. And that's as simple as it. And so I don't think we can camouflage it. I think, as I stated earlier, we call it what it is, we address it, because you know what? This is not going to be the only difficult conversation that we have if we're going to level the playing field for all. And don't think that everything is broken in the district. We have so many things. We need to have one night, as Dr. Jenkins said this earlier today, we need to have one night where we come in and just talk about all the best things that are happening in the district, because there's a plethora of good things happening. But if we're going to truly be great, let's take that next step. We have one foot in the water now. Let's put the next foot in and feel how good this ocean feels. And let's be an example for the entire country, if not the world.
Well, I think that we're starting that. We realize that K-8 is where we're missing some gaps here. Early child literacy, right? Giving access, setting the foundations. We're beginning the conversation of alignment. We have a CNI team that is focusing right now and bringing some commonalities going in here, setting that foundation. It is now vertical and horizontal. When Dr. Jenkins came in, that was his vision. And he has been preaching to us. And I'll be honest, many of us first were like, well, we're trying to get past the historic component. Well, that's the way we always do things here in Madison. And now we're seeing this. It's saying, this is lining it up for, just as my colleague just said, access for all.
So I'd like just to put some context to this in that the standalone honors were implemented in 2010 at the 9th and 10th grade level in the 4 comprehensive high schools to bring MMSD into compliance with state statutes. And the earned honors was started as part of the pathways model of implementation in 2017 and 18. I'm curious, do we have a breakdown of the core courses for which earned honors, standalone honors are being offered in each of the 4 comprehensive high schools? Because I know we haven't done earned honors for all of the core courses. And in some schools, it's only been in pathways. So do we have a breakdown of that over the last 3 years from when we started implementation? Because all we're seeing is the lumped in, here's what happens with all of earned honors. We're not seeing, we don't have earned honors in all of the core courses at this point. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Cindy?
Yeah, Chris, we can definitely get that for you. We have expanded in terms of across all 4 of our high schools, which courses offer earned honors. So we can definitely share that with you and kind of the phased approach over the few years and how we've expanded and grown. I also just want to remind everyone of one thing to add to Dr. Pryor. 9th and 10th grade is predominantly graduation required courses. So they are courses that all students have to take and are common courses. And so to this idea of access for all, we know that all students have to take these courses to graduate. So we want to ensure that all students have these same opportunities to earn honors through these courses that are predominantly graduation requirements. So I just wanted to add that. And we can definitely share the course offerings with you in a weekly update or however Dr. Jenkins and others choose to share it.
That would be great. And I just want to always recognize success where it's happening. And I think, I mean, looking at the slide on slide 12, the standalone honors, 41% of students in standalone honors are students of color, it says. And for me, that seems like progress from where we were 5 years ago. Can you also give us the longitudinal data on that? Because I think that is improvement from where we were before, but we don't have any of that information here. So can you like provide that too when you do the other parts? And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is, you know, when we were looking for models on earned honors, we kind of adopted this model from Evanston High School in Illinois. And their district had a comprehensive implementation and evaluation plan that went over 3 years and was put into place before their earned honors model was implemented. What implementation and evaluation model do we have in place? And is this something that we could work with, you know, WEC or, you know, our Wisconsin Education Collaborative to design this so we sort of have a roadmap for where we're going before we start? Or as we're in the middle, because we've already started and I don't know if we have that model in place. But it's really, I mean, I can share it with you. I can send it to you, what Evanston did, and you can take a look at it. Because it was pretty comprehensive in how they were going to measure success along the way and how they were actually doing the implementation. So I know you said we won't have outcome data until 23, 24, but this is more of a process implementation and evaluation. How are we implementing this along the way, not just about the student outcomes at the end?
I can respond to that.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't need you to speak, the team's speaking on what's going on, but I would just say in terms of that specific question, when you're implementing anything, and I heard you say that you've been involved with it for 10 years, I've been involved with this quite a bit. Right here in Wisconsin, got the results, right here in Wisconsin. And in Beloit, of all places, we saw increases. So, but in terms of anything that you're going to implement, a program of this nature, and College Board will tell you that too, yes, you do want to try to measure where you're going, but some of these deeper questions we ask, what Evanston had to face, and they had similar disparities in what we have to face and where we are on our journey, I do think it's a time for us to go back and make sure we're calibrating on what we're trying to get out of this. Not with Evanston, but what we're really trying to get out of it. But the whole key thing, Dr. Pryor said, access to all, what the principals have said here, I think we're in a special place, special moment that you do not see in education a lot of times. And I think, I said before, I said in the interview, if this can happen anywhere, where something can be transformed, it's Madison. Madison, Wisconsin, Madison Metropolitan School District. We have the University of Wisconsin, we have Madison College. So we need to come back and yes, do some collaboratives on how we're going to evaluate moving forward. And I also say that it has to be an evaluation that's also participatory with our staff, with our parents, and with our students. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to collaborate now on moving forward. This is critical. The most important conversation that I've had since I've been here is this. So I think we have to take time to get the science behind it to ensure we get the intended outcome, okay? And let me say this, you can talk about race and it not be racist. But if something racist, you gotta call it racist. That's it. There's no in between. And when we talk about what it means to be anti-racist, we have to say what it is. And I think the staff and the various staff, they're fired up right now, like I've not seen a staff on a particular issue. But we have to commit to the resources. As you said, and as I'll say, the board has to commit to the resources. I have to commit to the work of jumping out in front of a train to support them to do this work. This doesn't happen too often. This can start something worldwide as we come together, not if, as we come together to do it. I'm telling you, but we gotta call it what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you. Chris, I hope that answered your question. We will slow down to make sure that the work we've done and do a recalibration to ensure that the metrics are in place so that we can monitor appropriately to ensure that all students are getting the access and the quality of learning that they deserve.
Well, and thank you. I appreciate that. And the last thing that I'll highlight is just the work that we've done with the consulting group Equal Opportunity Schools that helps districts increase access to advanced placement courses for students of color and low-income students. And this work was part of the MMSD resolution with the Office for Civil Rights to address the racial disparities in access to and preparation for advanced coursework. And they see that work as transforming a school culture of expectations and mindsets of students and teachers around high-level academic achievement. And so I'm curious, are we continuing to do work with them? Because I've seen the great work that has come out of our 4 high schools with EOS and with the consultants. And I'm actually surprised why we don't take what we have learned in the capacity we have built and move that down to our honors level classes to try to help more students access the rigorous courses at that level. And I think that is the intention of EOS, is to build capacity within school districts to make what we offer more rigorous and open up both the access and the preparation for that. Are we going to continue to work with EOS? Are we going to have them as a consultant this year? And in what capacity are they working with our high schools?
So I can go, oh, sorry.
One second, this is twofold, and when you're trying to make transformation, it's multifaceted. We got to use EOS. Right now, there was one decision that we made early on that will pay great dividends, already has begun to. The number 1 person ranked right now having impact in public school education from last year, the rankings, I'll share it with you guys if you haven't seen it, is Gloria Lasson-Billings. She's ranked the number 1 most impactful person. We brought her on, and she's not coming on to play footsies with us. She calls us out. She tells us where we need to push in. But we will work with EOS as well as other entities who can bring forth the truth as we're trying to do this work. But we cannot move so fast, and I think Dr. McCray said it best. We're moving, we're jogging, we're not walking, but we can't sprint until we have all the metrics in place to ensure how we're going to monitor this so that our investment, we can get a return on it. And the ultimate return is to ensure that all of our children are getting what they need. And our staff, we have to support staff in doing this work. We do. Lisa, I'm sorry.
No, Dr. Jenkins, you were reading my mind on that. I was going to talk about Dr. Ladson-Billings as well. So appreciate you adding that to the conversation.
All right, Ananda? And then Ali?
Oh, wow. If I was behind that plastic glass, I would be like jumping up and down. This has been one of the most amazing conversations that have been in the board, and I'm extremely proud of our staff today. I wanted to go back to, I have just a couple of remarks, Savian, and then I have a question for our team. I wanted to go back what Nikki said, for us to be anti-racist and also anti-ableist And I totally get what you're saying, Nikki, but I have some news. Those things are not separated. Like we sometimes talk about them as two separate things, but they are intrinsic connected. So we get to be anti-racist and have a really sharp critical analysis. And being anti-racist also means being anti-ableist, being anti-xenophobic, being anti-homophobic, being anti-patriarchal, being, this space where people can express their full humanity, whatever they look like, whatever they are, whoever they are, they get to be humans, and they get to experience education at its full potential. And then I was thinking about Chris Caruso's question around what we're trying to resolve. And I remember when my daughter was in first grade, and she had a peer who was an English learner like my daughter, and also had an IEP. And that's when I learned that, for that student, their educational trajectory was already marked, right? It was unlikely for him to graduate it. It was impossible for him to get any honors class. He was likely to be dropped out and, somewhere along the career trajectory. And, like many students that we see, being in detention, that, that's what it, that was a path for him. And when I think about what we're trying to resolve, we're trying to not make a determination for students like the little Marvin that Dr. Pryor was talking about, where we get to see them in first and second and third grade, and we already know what's going to happen to them like 5-6 years later, which is exactly what happened to me, and is exactly what happened to my daughter. So I really appreciate Dr. Pryor, Dr. Hernandez, Dr. La Rosa, sharing their personal and professional experience. It's not divorced from my experience. When I went to ALPA at UW, which is highly regarded, one of the top programs in Wisconsin, people look at me, this immigrant person, and they were spouting out which Ivy League they went, which liberal arts school they went. And I just said to them, I just graduated from Madison College. And they were like chuckling. I'm like, that's right. And so let's talk about rigor. Because it makes totally sense that Chris would ask about rigor. People ask about rigor to me all the time. People ask rigor about my daughter all the time. And we have about 500 years of experience in showing how rigorous we are as a collective people of color in this country and all over the world. But I understand that, and Dr. Love addresses that extremely well. And all the qualifiers, jargon, educational terminology that we like to use, they're really coded to say we cannot do it. We're not there. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that. I also think that is a great space of vulnerability, because none of you are getting paid to teach us as board members about this. We should have known that, and some of us do, because we have our personal experiences, and we see that with our children. My daughter has her own story with earned honors. It was the first time Ali at the last meeting was sharing with us that she went through her entire MSD career with no Black teacher. My daughter had her first Black teacher when she was a first-year student at La Follette. And this teacher was the one that, encouraged her to take honors. And she loved that teacher. And she took honors, and she did extremely well, beyond her imagination. And that's what we're talking about. And so I believe this conversation is extremely important. And I think this conversation is too the very first step that we should be taking, right? There's so many other systemic things that are yet for us to see or to resolve or to address. So my question to the team is the same way that you all provided, your vulnerable stories, your personal stories, your professional stories to teach us what's like to be a person of color, what's like to be a white person going through the Madison School District, and the barriers, the systemic barriers that we face, alignment to the historical context of policies. Mike, kudos to you. Like, I loved the way you started your comments. To your personal story, Dr. Pryor, with little Marvin, like just really personalized, like that was extremely brilliant and skilled. But we know that there's a lot more education that we need as a community, with our students. My daughter does a lot of education in her own rights with her white peers, and with our parents and our family members that are asking those questions around rigor and around, not wanting, basically asking coded language, but saying inclusion is not supposed to be happening in Madison. Our community and our staff, and in particular our teachers, I think Dr. Pryor, you mentioned around, changing beliefs around who we are and be able to see us as humans, extremely capable of achieving whatever we choose to. But at times we needed to, show a different narratives to all of us. I had to go through that as an adult myself. And I had to do that to my daughter several times, and still today. And so what is your guys' vision around this narrative shifting, and in Madison, where we get to say that we're no longer asking racist questions. We're no longer, talking about whether or not our students are intellectually capable of whatever, or whether or not students with IEPs should be in particular places, or EL students should be in this one place but not the other. What are you all thinking about how we actually shift the narrative so we're not continue to hurt our students the way we do just by the way we say and talk about them?
Sharon, I see you stewing. I see you stewing on that question.
I'm really curious if Dr. Jenkins or Dr. Pryor have like a plan, a course of action of, I'm talking about what's the work with staff, because it's going to be, becoming anti-racist means that we're doing little steps of being a little less racist, as much as we can. And then there's this large narrative that our students hear about not being worthy of, particular in this case, of our conversations, being able to fit into honors class, or, feel like that they are allowed even. Like, I think there was the word access in there, and that's an important word to discuss. But what you all are doing, we're on for inclusion. We're really practicing that. I'm like, let me just say, I'm 100% behind you all on this. If there is no plan for, like, what does it look like, this is the shift. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I can't speak on a plan and on it, but what I can say, looking at the people with the screens on, that we're going to be unapologetic. And I can't think there's not anybody here that is about themselves. It's about the kids and being able to do this without fear. So if that's the plan, that's the plan. I'm not sure if we write that down, but for me, that's what we're going to do.
I feel it's what we wake up every day to do. It's what we stand for. It's not just words, it's action. And I want so much for the students in this district, the same thing that I wanted for myself, the same things I want for my kids. And it doesn't matter what background you come from or where you live or who you are, you deserve more. And I think that every person on this call is about that belief system. It is about breaking down those barriers and telling kids that they are the very best and believing in them and giving them the support if they don't believe in themselves. And that's the work. We can do this together.
And we're in a perfect position to do it, Ananda. We have our 4 comprehensive principles here today saying we are ready. Our teachers have already been engaging in these conversations. They've already been engaging in this work. We set the groundwork, we set the framework when we said that we were going to be anti-racist. We set the framework when we started having conversations about being anti-racist educators. Now it's time to be it, to do it. It's not enough to talk about it. It's not enough to do a book study. It's not enough to listen to a podcast. That's not enough, right? And so we identify what our platforms are. We identify the power that we have to then identify those practices that are anti-racist. We dismantle them, and then we continue to have this conversation, right? So wherever we are in the community, this is the conversation that we have. Because we're at the point where we need to continue to change hearts and minds and then follow through. That's how we do it. And then our kids will be successful. We just need to create the opportunities for them to engage. And we have to believe in our hearts that they actually can and they will.
I would add to that, and I think that's a powerful question. First, it starts with what we're doing tonight, having a conversation, and having a real conversation. You know, there's some of us on the screen tonight that's probably a little uncomfortable with the conversation that we're having. And I think part of our work is to bring a level of discomfort, especially to those who are upholding racist practices. We have to continue to ask the question, what are you afraid of? Why do you believe wholeheartedly that it shouldn't be equitable across the board? And so we have to continue to have the conversations. We have to continue to make those who are not with the program feel a little uncomfortable. Wow, we felt uncomfortable for a long time. And so that's what we have to do is change the narrative and continue that. As I look on this platform tonight and I see the faces here, I bet you 10 years ago, it did not reflect this. And, we have to elevate that as much as possible for our Black and brown children. And please know on this platform, and I'm being transparent. When I say Black and brown, I mean all, but I have to uplift the children and the people that have been suppressed, for so long, that have been marginalized for so long. When we talk about Black excellence, it's our job now to uplift that, to elevate that, and create models that they can see, touch, and feel, and somehow begin to dream again that it is possible. And so that is our work. And I'll just tell to the whole platform, I'm in a position in my life right now, this has become my life's mission. It becomes my life mission because I do know the power of a powerful relationship. I know the power of powerful words that is spoken to our children and how it can change the narrative and the outcomes for them. And that's the essence of our work. I don't think we continue to move in a space where we're trying to one up one another. We should always be looking on this platform tonight here. We should always look at practices, and we should always look at policies, because that's where the skeletons are buried, and we have to uplift them, look behind them, and if they're wrong, let's right them.
Thank you so much. And you do not need to go that far to find a much more homogeneous space. So that's my last word. Thank you, Savian.
Elise?
Yeah, I think that we flatten disproportionality, especially in advanced learners, when we talk exclusively about disproportionality in terms of race. I think advanced learners or AP or earned honors or honors are areas in which we have to acknowledge the many different ways in which certain communities have been set up to fail. right? So I asked a student a few years ago if it was gonna be uncomfortable for him when he went to engineering school, if the majority of his college classes were white men. And he said no, because that's been the majority of my advanced learning math classes the entire time I have gone to school here. This was not, 10 years ago, y'all. This was 2 years ago. Talking to a student who had been placed in advanced learning math classes throughout their entire career and told me that the majority of people in those classes every year from elementary school through high school were other white boys, right? So I think including our data around gender, including our data around disability, I think that's incredibly relevant. I do think the information we saw tonight was exciting. So I want to thank you all for showing us that it is possible for our students of color to have greater access to honors within our schools. I think that is an incredibly important conversation to have, and I know that none of you would be having this conversation with us if you thought we were there. If you thought the data you showed us tonight was good enough, was where we should stop. And so I look forward to seeing how we progress this work and how we add greater depth to this work. When we treat our achievement gaps as if they are an accurate reflection of the capacity of our students, we are subscribing to racism. We are subscribing to the status quo. So to treat our achievement gap as if it is a reflection in terms of the deficits around opportunities we give to certain students, I think that is a major shift and a shift we have to be proud of as a community, a shift we've needed to make for a long time and a shift that needs to be made aggressively. So I want to thank you all for doing that work. I do hope we leave this conversation tonight with a sense of where we're going, with a sense of how we are going to continue to see this work progress, and what our goal is ultimately in terms of all of our students. We talked a lot tonight about making sure every student has access to earned honors, has access to rigorous curriculum. I also think we have to talk about what it means for every student to be validated in their intellectual capacity, for every student to see themselves as intelligent at school. It's a big deal. And I think having that conversation is incredibly important. So I guess my only question for you all this evening is, what will it mean for us to have continued to do this work and be committed to this work 5 years from now? What will those graphs look like, in 10 or 20 years in terms of who all is earning earned honors credit, who all is being recognized as an advanced learner? How are we going to continue to push this work forward and make this work more and more inclusive?
That is a great question, and I say to you, the answer is imagine this. With all the barriers we've experienced, after Brown versus the board, the Green Six, I'm a residual of Brown versus the Board of Education. I sit here as superintendent, and I had all the barriers. And if we just cleared away all of our students, regardless of their race or their gender, right, or their ideas, and let them be free, imagine how powerful this room will be in 20 years. And in order to do that, we do have to take this nexus and say, what are we going to do with our moment? Because our moment could not only transform Madison, it could transform the United States, it could transform the world. So we have to go back to the drawing board and say, what is it that we really are looking at? I'm talking about way out. I'm talking about our children. Will they be back? Because I'm 5 generations from a slave. Okay? My grandmother was a slave. And if she could produce a seed to get to my grandmother, to get to me, with a PhD from UW-Madison, imagine how powerful the cure for cancer. It's in this opportunity. You know, race relationships around the world. Ableism, as Nikki speaks about, we would just see people as people. When we clear the playing field. But that's going to only happen when one group of people have the courage to say, what I've been taught about the lies of America's history, it's time to stop. This is why we're in the country we're in right now, where it's split. I don't care what room you walk in, it's split. Because we've lost our sense of human decency. And this is really America we're supposed to be having. We're supposed to be a country of ideas and be able to debate and still not lose sight of the fact that we're dealing with a human being. So I think your question is a brilliant question that needs to be debated and put on every front page. We wake up tomorrow and say, what is it going to be? And then the other question behind your question, what is it about me and my behavior that's going to allow it to continue? Or what is it going to take for me to disrupt? Courage starts within, not what I can do to you, but what can I do to myself? That's what I would say. So I think that's a fabulous question. Is we're going to be committed, this team, to moving this work forward. I'm looking forward to taking my last breath right here in Madison, doing this work, transforming what we're going to do. Don't get too excited. That's 50 years for those who don't know me. I have 50 years to go. I'm going to be 105 and I'm going to be done. Okay? So, but we're in it for the journey. That's what I say.
I greatly appreciate that. I think the last thing I want to speak to is that there's 5 areas of advanced learning. I talk about this every time we talk about advanced learning. But we often talk about advanced learning at excluding the arts. And one of the areas of advanced learning is leadership. One of the other areas of advanced learning is performing arts. And so I hope that there is a greater emphasis on our ability to do that work, to broaden how we are inclusive by broadening what we are recognizing as advancement moving forward. And I'm not asking anybody to comment on that. I just want us I want to put that in your ear, and hopefully the next time we have this conversation, there is some emphasis on those areas.
May I say one of the last things that I don't think all of us need to lose sight of?
Would you want the closing comment or do I have a closing comment? Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Let's not forget this conversation is about excellence. We continue to talk about these disparities. There's a gap between excellence and non-excellence that we have to realize. Why can't all of our children? I never forget Ananda's comment. She said, why not both? Why we can't do this work and yet do the other work too, simultaneously? That's the real work, to do both, to annihilate this whole idea of racism and to achieve excellence throughout our system in the world. Why not both?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to uplift 2 things I heard tonight from Mr. Kearney. When you said what's best for kids is what's best for teachers, I was ready to run through a brick wall. And then when Ms. Jackson said that, we've got to take this beyond the book clubs and the talk, and we got to do action, and we got to make changes now. Of course, we will continue to monitor it, but we can't just say equity and expect it to magically appear. We have to take action. There was a lot of reference to Brown v. Board tonight, and that reminded me that, when we integrated schools, we didn't bus white kids to black schools, we bused black kids to white schools, and we lost a lot of black teachers in the process. I am just really concerned about why are we holding on to this concept of standalone honors when all the data tells us that our black and brown students don't feel like they belong in that concept? So what we're trying to do here, we're trying to build something new and different that is inclusive and accessible to all children and raises the bar and creates a new culture for all children. And we have to have the courage to step into that. We have to learn and make adjustments along the way, yeah, absolutely. But, we have to have the courage to have that conversation, and discomfort is healthy. discomfort helps us grow, and we gotta go ahead first in that, so thank you. All right,
Are you entertaining a motion to adjourn?
yes,
So moved.
all those in favor?
Second, you need
I
a
second,
Oh, can I get a
I
second?
second, Ananda, second.
She's in the room.
Let the record note, Ananda seconded. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a nice night, y'all. Thank you.
We're done.